Welcome to the February 2nd, 2016 meeting of the Carson City Parks and Rec Commission. Chairman Long is in transit, and he will be here in about 15 minutes. Madam Secretary, will you call roll, please?
Chairperson Long. Vice Chair Keever.
Here.
Commissioner Adams. Commissioner Bagwell. Here. Commissioner Casiopo. Here. Commissioner Coburn. Commissioner Curtis. Here. Commissioner Glenn. Commissioner Lehman.
Here.
A quorum's present.
Excellent. Is there any public comments? All right, hearing none, let's move on to item 1, possible action on the approval of minutes from our November 4th, 2015 meeting and our December 1st, 2015 meeting. Are there any corrections or modifications to either set?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Excellent. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries. Let's move on to item 2, modifications to the agenda. Are there any modifications to the agenda?
None from staff.
All right. Any from the commissioners? Let's move on to item 3, for possible action to elect a chairperson and a vice chairperson of the Parks and Recreation Commission for the 2016 calendar year. Roger, you're going to take this?
I sure will. I'll start out and just permit me to just go ahead and read this from the staff report. As per the Park and Recreation Commission bylaws, the commissioners must hold an election during their first meeting of the year to select a chairperson and vice chairperson for the calendar year. On December 17th, 2015, the Board of Supervisors adopted on a second reading an amended Chapter 2.16 Carson City Parks and Recreation Commission ordinance. That's in your packet as Exhibit A. This ordinance reduces the number of commissioners from 9 to 7. There are 4 sitting commissioners whose terms on the commission has expired, including Commissioner Colburn, Commissioner Long, who is our present chair, Commissioner Keever, who is our present vice chair, and Commissioner Adams. The Board of Supervisors will be making commission appointments during their February 18th, 2016 meeting, and will only be able to make 2 appointments. If any of these 4 commissioners are elected to an office and not reappointed, the commission will have to hold another election at their April meeting. And, I think you're all aware, in fact, our chair is now just entering into the meeting. I think you're all aware that, the situation was a recommendation that was brought to the Parks and Recreation Commission to make these amended changes to the ordinance. The Parks and Recreation Commission made the recommendation to forward that to the Board of Supervisors, and they acted positively on it. So today you have the opportunity to select your chair and your vice chair, with the caveat knowing that if for whatever reason they don't get reappointed, then at the next meeting, which will be the meeting in April, you'll have to go through the process again. So any questions? Yes, Donna.
I guess, is it kosher to ask if any of the commissioners that are up for reappointment are not planning to apply, or?
I suppose you can ask. I don't know if they have to.
They don't have to answer, of
but
course.
I guess you can ask.
I just thought maybe we could narrow the odds a little more. Guess.
I don't want to all speak at once. I plan on reapplying, but I can't speak for anybody else. I haven't heard from any of the other commissioners.
I too plan on reapplying.
Or usually that's the rule, right? If you're not here.
Does anybody want to make a motion?
Okay.
Public comment, I think, first as well, right?
No public comment on
No?
the chair and
Okay.
vice chair.
Okay.
Mr. Chair? As, you know, as we have been doing, I think, as long as I've been on here, normally the vice chair, after a couple of years, is nominated and mostly approved to be the new chair. And so I would like to nominate Leanne Keever as the new chair. I think Brett's done a wonderful job, and he's had an opportunity now to do it, and I think everybody should have a chance. So I would like to nominate Leanne.
I'll make a second.
I'll second it.
Yeah, and I actually did.
Oh, I'm
but-
sorry,
but
I thought you were asking for a second.
Yeah, no. All in
Never
favor?
mind.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so I know I just kind of walked in the middle of that, but so this is going to go on to the supervisors, and then you guys will make the final approval. That's correct? Okay.
Not for the election of officers.
Oh, no, not for chair. Okay. Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this is just in the bylaws. This is the, you know, an independent action by the commission.
Okay. So I guess just to understand it, so that as Commissioner Kiver is going to move into essentially the chair position, she's by default going to be one of the two representatives reelected.
Well, not necessarily.
Okay,
That's,
okay.
yeah, you came in a little bit late.
Got it.
You know, we have,
That's the part we're gonna be
we have
doing in
4
April.
people, commissioners up for reappointment. If for some reason Commissioner Keever is not reappointed by the board, then at the next meeting in April, we'll have another election.
Got it. Understood. Thank you.
So does she take
We need a vice chair.
Well, yeah, she can take over as the chair now.
And that's all the same. Boom, boom.
All right, so,
You're back on.
back on.
That's right.
All right, so now we need to elect a vice chair. Does anybody have any nominations, recommendations? And also, the record should reflect that Commissioner Glenn has joined us.
I have oh, go ahead.
Does someone want to be vice chair?
Are there any people who would volunteer to be our chair, vice chair? Any motions?
Do you want a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I recommend Robert Glenn as vice chair for the 2016 tenure for the Parks and Rec Commission.
All right. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Commissioner Glenn, you are now vice chair. Woo-hoo. Moving on to agenda item 3B, discussion only regarding a review of the Parks and Recreation Commission bylaws. Roger's going to fill us in on this.
Okay, again, annually at the first meeting, the commissioners review the bylaws. Again, I have those as Exhibit A for this agenda item, in order to make a determination if they want to make any changes for the coming year. According to the bylaws, any amendments introduced during this meeting cannot be acted upon or voted on until the next meeting, which is April 5th, 2016. Any changes require an affirmative vote of 2/3 of the total commission membership to pass. In addition, as I mentioned before, on December 17th, 2015, the Board of Supervisors adopted on the second reading an amended Chapter 2.16 Carson City Parks and Recreation Commission Ordinance, which is Exhibit B in your packet. The amended ordinance will require a minimum of the following 2 changes. Unless I missed something when I went through, but there are at least 2 changes that need to be made. First one is under Section 1, meetings, in the first sentence. It is the intent of the Park and Recreation Commission to meet bi-monthly on the first Tuesday of the following months, February, April, June, August, October, and December. The second change would be Section 10 under quorum, subsection A, change 5 to 4. And that reflects the reduction in the number of members, number of commissioners from 9 to 7. So today, this is only a discussion item only, but it's an opportunity for the commission to look at the bylaws and make any other suggested changes. We can bring those suggested changes back at the April 5th meeting and allow the commissioners to have the vote on those changes at that time.
Thank you, Roger. Does any of the commissioners have comments or questions?
Yes. Just question, I think, and then maybe a suggestion, but Article 4, officers, it says, at the regular meeting of each calendar year, the commission shall elect a chair and a vice chair for that year. Is it in the policies of the Board of Supervisors that it has to be done that way, or could we elect a chair and a vice chair for 2 years? Because since we're only meeting half as much, I just kind of thought it might be better to give the person an opportunity to, serve for 12 meetings.
I can research that and find out if it is in the board policy and bring that back at the April meeting with a determination. We can certainly take a look at that.
And then, Madam Chair, I had another
Yes.
comment is under officers' duties of the chair, kind of a similar question. I don't know if this is already in policy form or not, but we're going to be talking about the annual report that we give to the Board of Supervisors each year, and I'm just wondering if we should make it official that the chair will put together the annual report and give it to the board. And, of course, in the absence of the chair, the vice chair would do it.
Roger, do you have any thoughts on that?
No, if you'd like to bring that back to the April meeting for a vote, we can include it. I would kind of offhand guess that would probably fit in somewhere between B and C or C and D. That we could add that verbiage. And I don't think we have to do that under the vice chair's duties, because D says in the absence of the chair, these duties will be assumed by the vice chair. So that kind of covers that in additional duties. But we can certainly bring that up and bring it back in, as I mentioned before, for the April meeting.
Roger, are we essentially just saying we would add an item that
Yeah.
essentially would recommend that each year a review is given?
I think we could just say, present the annual report at the
Present
Board of
annual- yeah,
Supervisors meeting.
exactly. Okay.
Since, Roger, you brought up reducing the number of commissioners from 9 to 7, item 10, quorum, talks about a quorum shall be 5 members, so we'll need to update that as well.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Commissioner Glenn?
Yeah, assuming we want to update it, I mean, we could still leave it as 5 out of 7, or we could change it to 4 out of 7. But in addition to that, the B is actually, I'm just reading it for the first time under quorum, but it says a requirement for 2/3 of the vote shall mean that 6 commissioners vote aye. It doesn't say 2/3 of the present commissioners, so it's assuming there's a full, that everybody's there. I mean, that definitely has to be updated, but it also makes an assumption there that 2/3 means 6 of the members, not 6, not 2/3 present. Do you understand what I'm saying?
So maybe we just delete where it says, that shall mean the 6 commissioners, yeah. Yeah, just leave it at 2/3.
Yeah.
Yep, good catch.
Commissioner Lehman?
So real quick, going back to the annual report, does the annual report generally happen at the first of the year to the Board of Supervisors?
You've never
Or
done
does
it?
it?
Well, we got our very first one coming up this Thursday. And so it doesn't mean it's at the first, it doesn't mean it's necessarily it's at the first meeting of the Board of Supervisors for the year, but it's an annual meeting, so.
I guess if it's going to happen in like January, February, would we say the outgoing chair gives that? Because who's going to give it this time?
I think if you leave it, Commissioner Wong's going to give it.
But if it says chair, then it would be,
Yeah, but he was, yeah. understanding is it's the chair of the previous year,
The year of the
that served
report.
during the previous year.
The year of the report.
And we could add that to the wording.
So, and I think somewhere, as I'm preparing for that for Thursday, I think I had read that a lot of the time, just, there's references to a meeting, our January meeting. And now, I think as a whole, as we're moving to every other month, that there will be no more January meeting as well. I don't know that that's necessarily in our bylaws. I think it's more just in other reference documents that are referencing the January meeting. One thing I did want to point out also was that where the 2/3 are, there's a quorum, and the quorum, I think, says that the quorum would be 5, which I believe that we could make, it just needs to be a quorum, the quorum being the majority, right? Or we could define it as 4, but that would need to be updated as well.
My recommendation on the staff report was you change the 5 to 4.
Okay.
Does that create any issues for us? If we have a quorum of 4, we have an even number. So not an issue, I don't think. I just wanted to make sure no one was concerned about that. Yeah, okay.
Any other questions or comments from the commissioners?
So what was our, on 10B, a requirement of 2/3 vote will mean that, we were going to change it from 6?
I think we just.
Commissioners?
I think we just leave it as to be considered an approval motion. A vote of simple majority of the commissioners shall be required unless a 2/3 vote is required for action.
And then we were going
And
to.
maybe
So we're
just-
gonna-
And just leave it there, I think.
And remove the definition
Yes.
of what a,
Yep, just remove the last sentence.
completely,
And then the 10A would be 4, not 5.
right? And so then in 8, the amendment, an amendment to these bylaws introduced, the regular meeting shall vote it on and require affirmative vote of 2/3 of what?
The total commission membership or the total people attending?
So that's still 6, so why are we
That's not 6.
9 times 2/3? What are we,
We're 7.
7 times
seven.
2/3? So are we
So
gonna,
5 would be adequate.
5 out of the 6.
6.
And that's,
so if we only have 4 or 10, then we can't do a
right, it
bylaws?
has to be the total membership. So it's not a quorum of the membership present.
It's not 2/3 of those present that
Right.
created a quorum.
Right.
So we're gonna say it means
Yep.
5,
Yep.
just so we're all clear what we're, right. Okay,
So we better have 5 people here next week, next meeting.
well, you're catching up. Show up.
It'll be June before.
Yeah, exactly. And you need public comment.
So, this was a discussion-only item, so we don't need to take any action, correct?
We
That's
can't,
correct. The action will be taken in the April meeting.
All righty.
but you need public comment.
Okay, public comment? Okay, let's move on to item 3C, presentation and discussion only by Thomas Reed, Eagle Scout, on the completion of his Lone Mountain Park Trail enhancement and fence signage removal project. Thomas, welcome. Thank you so much for coming.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm Thomas Reed, as she said. So I did the Lone Mountain, if I can direct your attention to either of the screens. With the help of Mr. Cronin, the Department of Open Space and everything, I got that, or like sorry.
Relax, you're fine. You're amongst friends.
There we go. Yeah, I improved the Lone Mountain Park Trail quite a bit for my Eagle Scout project with the help of a lot of the different guys in my troop and everything. So if I can take you through a slideshow of pictures of before and after, that is what I'll do. I did not bring any popcorn. I'm very sorry. Okay. So yeah, this is before. If you look closely, you can see, here, let's see, I have a little pointer, don't I? If you look closely, you can see right here, there's quite a bit of erosion and everything where the water actually flows down the trail like this and then comes off the side. And so it's starting to, well, it was starting to erode the bank of dirt and everything that helped people get up to the trail. There's some weeds and everything, and thanks to these trusty Boy Scouts and one leader right here. You can see that the erosion is gone. A lot of the weeds are gone and everything, except for a few of them, which I think they left just kind of to have something there, so it wasn't just a nasty looking dirt wall. And that's another before picture of the same area. You can see the erosion a lot clearer right here. And that is after. Here's before. These are two of the signs that said revegetation in progress, keep off. I got a little bit different of an angle, but this shows these were two of my helpers right here, and one of the spots where we removed, I think it was 4 of those signs. And so it just looks a lot better without those yellow and green posts and everything in there. So this is one of the areas that was just covered in graffiti. There's kind of like a little rock acropolis at the top of one of the hills, and the inside was just covered like this. And that is part of it afterwards. We painted it with a color of paint that was similar to that of the rock to cover it up. This is a panorama of the area. So that is from kind of where the bench is. We put in a bench, and you can see this down here. This is the cemetery, and then you've got a nice view over here of the city and the mountains. This is the bench that we put in. We had to dig it out and everything, dig some holes to put the bench legs in, and then mount it with concrete, and then build up a dirt ledge underneath it so that it was exactly 18 inches high. This is the time where I ask if any of you have questions.
On the first slide with the erosion that you guys fixed, we appreciate you doing it. I'm wondering, is that a problem area to where the city, you know, we could rip-wrap it at some point? Do we expect it to be eroding again? It kind of looked like it came to a little point.
It was difficult to tell from the slide, but what we did is we had Thomas and his crews back slope the trail into the slope versus over the slope. So that's, so instead of running the water, draining it over the slope, we had them, what had happened is the sediment had built up to the point where along the inside of the trail, where it built up long enough to now the water was starting to go over the slope. Right. So they went in and they cleaned it all back up, and then it drains from the top now down the little swale on the inside of the bank, if you will, down to the bottom. Okay. So that's what that project, and it didn't quite show as well in those slides, but that's what they did.
No, I appreciate it. I just wanted to make sure all your good work doesn't go away on the next rainstorm or something. So I was glad to hear that. Thanks.
Any other questions? Commissioner Curtis?
Yeah, a couple of questions. Thanks again for your work. In removing the careful revegetation signs, does that mean everything is vegetated the way it should be and we don't have to warn people to stay off of it?
Well, according to Mr. Cron here, he said that those revegetation signs had gone up, I believe it was somewhere around 10 years ago, and it was when they had cut into the hillside to build part of that development back there. So he said that the revegetation was had come far enough to where even if people were to start walking on it, a lot of the plants and everything that had grown would not go away very easily. So.
And what was the white material on the rock? Is that guano or
Graffiti?
Oh, this.
the white.
Yes, this right here. This is silver spray paint.
I'm sorry.
It's silver spray paint.
Oh.
Yeah, it's. I got it at a weird angle, so it just kind of refracts the light and makes it look really silver.
I thought once again, if St. Birds came back, it might be a problem.
Yeah.
Well, it might happen. A bird that big can do whatever it wants. Don, if I could follow up a little bit on those revegetation signs, one of the other things that was happening with those revegetation signs is they became tagging targets. So what happened was it said revegetation in progress, and then you had all sorts of tagging on all of, or most of them, all the way across. There was probably a dozen or so of those revegetation signs we took out.
I believe there was 13.
13?
To be exact.
So they were 13, and they were put up there a long time ago. And why don't you share, I think it was you that had one of the neighbors come up and talk to you about those signs?
Oh, yeah, while we were taking down the signs and everything, one of the people who lives down the hillside actually walked up and started talking to me and one of the guys that I was with. He said, thank you so much for getting rid of those signs, because not only do they just destroy the view of the hillside and everything, but these kids, I guess, run around and they shoot them with airsoft guns, and then so that gets really loud. And then whenever the wind blows whenever the wind blows hard, they would just, because some of them were off the hinges a little bit, so they would just bang against the bar and everything, and I guess it would make them not sleep.
Are there questions or comments for Thomas?
I just want to say thank you, Thomas, and is there anything that can be done to help, I guess, monitor that area to make sure we don't get tagging in the future, or is that just kind of something that's going to happen periodically?
Well, that's difficult short of having somebody up there 24/7. But we do have a park ranger that, that monitors that area, and we now have as you know, an open space ranger too. So we've doubled our ranger surveillance, efforts. But it's difficult. The vandals are out 24/7. Unfortunately, park employees, staff aren't.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have some more for us, Thomas?
Oh, I was just going to say thank you, everyone, for taking the time to listen to me speak and everything, and thank you to Mr. Cron and Mr. Wilkinson for all the help that they gave me to help me achieve my Eagle Scout. So, thanks.
Congratulations.
You have your Eagle Scout now?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, I got it December 22nd.
Big achievement. Well, thank you so much for undertaking this project, and thank you for reporting back to us. And Vern, thank you for working with him. We appreciate that.
That's one of the fun things about my job. Every once in a while, we get an Eagle Scout project to come through, and you get to see the opportunities of what they can do for us. And it just, not only young men like Thomas, but some of the other Eagle Scouts we've had here before just kind of give me hope in the future. I mean, it really is. I mean, some of the stuff we see in the newspapers and on radio, sometimes doesn't paint the best picture of our young people, but people like Thomas and some of the other scouts, Eagle Scouts we've seen here, give me hope for the future. It's a good thing.
Do we have any public comment on this item? Hearing none, we'll move along to item 3D, but not before we say thank you again to Thomas.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Okay, so item 3D, we're to recommend to the Planning Commission approval of the Lompa Ranch North Specific Plan Areas Park and Trail components as identified in Chapter 3, and Vern Cran and Mike Rayleigh. Did I pronounce your name correctly, sir? Rayleigh, like the store. Welcome and thank you both.
Well, let me go ahead and just kick this off for a little bit. I'm going to, like Roger, kind of read from my staff report just to give the folks at home a little bit of a context. Of course, you guys have had the staff report to review ahead of time, but for those of you watching, I'd like to just spend a little bit of time reading through a couple things in the staff report, and then I'm going to turn it over to Mike. So this past month, the Rubicon Design Group submitted a master plan amendment for the Lompa Ranch North Specific Plan Area to the Community Development Department. This planning area was identified in the Carson City Master Plan adopted by the Board of Supervisors on April 6th, 2006, and I have put that in your packet as an Exhibit A. The intent of the Lompa Ranch Specific Plan Area was identified in the city's master plan was to establish policies and provide a framework for future development of this area. Now, that was in 2006. We were in 2016. 10 years later, we now have a potential developer moving forward with this property. So this is kind of exciting because we could start to implement things within the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. We've talked about that before here at the commission, is that when you do have development like this, it's nice to partner and get these things completed as a part of the development because it's in the master plan. It gives us the ability at staff level to make sure that the policies that are in it get implemented, and then eventually get taken down through the construction, down through the planning process to actually building the park facility. So this is one of the first steps in getting that done for that area. The proposed development land use change has significant implications for the implementation of the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, which I provided you the neighborhood section in your packet as well, and the Unified Pathways Master Plan, and I took an enlarged section of the master plan and put that in your packet as well for your reference. The Parks and Recreation Master Plan requires the development of a neighborhood park facility within the proposed development on both sides of the freeway. On the east side of the freeway, the proposed development overlaps into the southwest corner of Neighborhood 21. As the commission remembers, the master plan identifies 30 neighborhoods within the city that were a part of the planning process, and this was identified as Neighborhood 21. That is in your packet as well. On the west side of the freeway, the development encompasses all of Neighborhood 22. The Unified Pathways Master Plan identifies on the east side of the freeway a number of small missing links in the city's pathway system and on-street bike lanes. Also, there will be connections to the city's new multi-use path along the freeway to the proposed 3-acre park over off of Airport. On the west side of the freeway, the Unified Pathway Master Plan identifies more missing links as well as an interconnected pathway system within the development and to both the proposed 10-acre neighborhood park and the on-street bicycle lanes. Mr. Raley is here. He's partner with the Rubicon Design Group and is speaking on behalf of the developer group. And as I understand it, it's a group of folks that are putting this thing together. And he'll be here tonight, which he is, to talk about it. And I'm just going to turn it over to Mike to kind of walk you through how they see this development working.
Thank you. I'm Mike Raley with Rubicon Design Group. I represent Blackstone Development Group, which is a group of investors that's working to develop the Lompa Ranch. I've got a kind of a brief PowerPoint to give you an overview. That's the property that is included within our specific plan. So it's the north side of the Lompa Ranch. So it's essentially everything north of 5th Street all the way up to the Gold Dust West, east of the high school, excluding the existing ranch house that's there. That piece will be left out. And then on the east side of the freeway, is kind of, if you go from where the sewer plant is north, essentially everything that's there on between Airport Road and the freeway, up until you hit the existing development on the north side to those the apartment complexes. So to total about 251 acres, just over 251 acres. I'm sure most of you know the history of Lompa Ranch. It was a cattle and sheep ranch that dated back to the 1930s. And then, of course, when the freeway came through, it fundamentally changed the character of the area, and the family has since, sold or in the process of selling the property. What our first step really, and what we're working on right now, is a LOMAR and a CLOMAR process. And what that is a letter of map revision and a conditional letter of map revision, and that's a process with FEMA to remove the site from the floodway and then ultimately the floodplain to allow development. So we're doing the engineering studies, showing the new drainage improvements that are going, and we're working with FEMA that will actually be submitted next week. We've had preliminary meetings with them as well as Public Works and engineering staff, and that's moving forward on a positive note. As Vern mentioned, this is identified as a specific plan in the Carson City Master Plan, and that's the policy that essentially creates the framework for what we're doing. And as you see, I highlighted in red that parks and open space are a component of that. And then within the master plan itself, the provision of park multi-use paths and open space facilities. Vern touched on this, but it's definitely was envisioned 10 years ago when that plan was put into place, that the improvements within the developed area would include parks, open space, and trails to implement some of the other plans that the city has. And that includes the United Pathways Master Plan, the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, the Open Space Master Plan, and the Carson City Master Plan. So as you see, there's a lot of documents that pertain to this property that really this is, in many cases, a key missing link to provide connectivity between both sides of the freeway. So as part of this process, we've had several meetings with city staff, including the Parks Department. We sat down with Vern and his team and went through what the needs were and to try to determine what size parks were necessary to serve the population that we're anticipating in the project. Of course, we've had many meetings with the planning department. We've also met with the school district. As you'll see in a minute, we have a school site to be dedicated as part of this project after meeting with the school district. And we've also met with police and fire. We also have a fire station site that we'll be dedicating as part of this as well. So this is our proposed land use plan, and I apologize, it's a little hard to read, but essentially everything you see in green is parks or open space. So this is the proposed 10-acre community park on the west side, a 3-acre neighborhood park on the east side, and then a multi-use path that would essentially connect everything together back over to the high school. The blue site right here would be for an elementary school as identified by the school district and a fire station. Keep in mind that these are generalized land uses, so those can shift around. I don't think we would put the elementary school right next to the high school, but it would be in close proximity. Just to give you a frame of reference, this is Robinson Street here with the new collector roadway going from 5th Street, eventually all the way up to Highway 50, just west of the Gold Dust West, kind of between, if you can imagine where the signal is there at the Gold Dust West, that's where that road would ultimately connect.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt, but before you leave that map, what is the green area then on the left-hand corner?
Right here?
No, across, with the dots on it?
Green area. Oh, that's Mills Park. Yeah. That's the land base that you see there is the city's master plan map, so it includes everything that's not as part of our property. And this, just to give you a frame of reference, the gray that you see here, that's the high school. So our current process is we've submitted for a master plan and amendment and a zone change to establish the underlying land use. That includes a comprehensive analysis of traffic impacts, water impacts, sewer. So we submitted all those engineering reports, and those are in for review now, and we'll be going to the Planning Commission later this month for that. At this time, there's no development proposed because we're simply establishing our underlying land use. And as soon as that, once that's approved, then we can come forward with tentative subdivision maps, special use permits, that sort of thing, so project specifics. But this is the first step in the process, is to get through the master plan level of the planning process. And then here's the part that everybody's probably much more interested in now that I've given you a background. All the facilities that we call out, and we have standards in what's essentially going to become part of a city document. It will become part of the master plan, is our design handbook, so to speak, and that all the facilities are required to conform to the United Pathways Master Plan, Parks and Recreation Master Plan, and Open Space Plan adopted by Carson City. So what that means is those standards that are included in those documents of what the trails must look like, what the materials used, that sort of thing, those will all roll over into our plan, and it will adopt those standards. Additionally, we will create a landscape maintenance district to provide for the maintenance of the new facilities that are being put in. I know maintenance costs are always a big issue with municipalities. So that will essentially offset those maintenance costs by providing an assessment on the homes that are going to be in our development. Key component is the connectivity between the neighborhoods and the park and open space facilities. We have standards that require trail connections, sidewalk connections, so that no matter where you're at in Lompa Ranch North, there's a pedestrian route to get to the parks and to get to the open space. Same with back up to the high school. We want to get to those community facilities. All identified wetlands areas, we're actually in the process of completing our wetland study. All those will be dedicated. Any identified wetlands will be dedicated as open space. All the open space areas will also be included within the landscape maintenance district, so there'll be a mechanism to provide those and their upkeep, keep them free of trash and that sort of thing. And of course, we encourage joint use facilities. We're anticipating some large detention basins as part of our drainage study to incorporate those as recreational amenities as well, so that, and that's been successful at other locations in the city. So we've broken it down essentially in two sides, the west side of the freeway and the east side of the freeway. So on the west side, we have a 10-acre community park, and that would be triggered at the 750th unit within the project. And I know that sounds like a lot, but when you think about it, a single apartment complex can have 250 lots. A tentative map usually ranges around 100 lots. So we anticipate hitting that trigger fairly quickly once things really get going. Once again, we'll have linear open space along the freeway, a meandering path connecting 5th Street to the northern boundary, trail connections from the north-south trail to the community park, and then sidewalk and/or trail connections from the high school and the new elementary to the community park. And then any new roadway improvements that we'll trigger based on our new traffic generations, we'll have to do some improvements to Salomon and 5th Street, for example. Those will obviously all include bike lanes and to current city standards. For the east side, there's a 3-acre neighborhood park, which is triggered at the 250th unit. If you look at our proposed land use plan, we call for multifamily residential on the east side, kind of adjoining the existing apartments. I would think it's probably a fairly safe bet to say that the first project on the east side first residential project on the east side would likely trigger the park. And once again, we have a north-south trail. We'll provide connection, and it's coordinated with the city's plan improvements. And then an east-west multi-use path connecting 5th Street with the north-south trail shown in the United Pathways Master Plan. And any improvements to Airport Road, depending on our final traffic counts, will include the provision for bike lanes. Just in summary, we incorporate the standards and designs envisioned and implemented by the various city plans. We meet and/or exceed park service standards per the Park Recreation Master Plan. Like I said, no development proposed at this time, but those projects we're busy working on those now. Once we get through this process, we're anxious to start moving forward with those projects. And those will go through a public review process as well. And then if anybody has any questions, I've put all my contact information up there. If you have questions that you think of that, oh, he didn't answer this, but I'm curious, don't hesitate to email me, call me. I can tell you my cell phone is much easier to get me than the office phone, so don't hesitate to call my cell phone. And I've got my electronic leash, so I can't get away from emails and that sort of thing either. So we're always happy to answer questions. So,
Mike, thank you so much. Do any of the commissioners have any questions or comments about this project?
Mike, I'm sorry. Mike, I was just trying to skim through there. How many total units are you guys anticipating?
If you look at an absolute worst-case scenario, if we maximized everything, it would come out to just under about 2,500 units.
Okay.
Realistically, it's probably going to be more about 1,500 based on some of the product types that we're looking at.
Okay. And then, can I keep going for a
Keep
second?
going, yes.
Sorry. On your Lomar and Clomar efforts, I guess what's your rationale or whatnot? Because I know a lot of that area is in a floodway as opposed to a flood zone.
Right.
What's your rationale that you think you'll be able to pull all or most of that?
And I know enough to be dangerous because I'm not the project engineer, but I can tell you that with the Lomar that's going in would actually remove, based on the proposed drainage improvements, would remove the entire site from the floodway. Portions of it would remain in the floodplain, and then on a kind of a case-by-case, project-by-project thing, they could submit a Clomar, which would remove them from the floodplain based on their individual drainage improvements. So essentially, we're removing it from the floodway and a large portion from the floodplain to make it suitable for development, and then each individual project will have to address its own drainage within the, so.
Commissioner Long?
Yeah, I just had a couple. So from looking at some of the pictures, it looked like maybe some of it was subdivision with like homes. Is this mainly just targeted towards apartment type complexes? Or
Absolutely
is it
not.
both?
No, we have a wide range. We have everything from apartments to townhomes to single-family residential to fairly larger lot type residential. So it's definitely a mix across the board. The idea is that it's really kind of a very diverse community in terms of the housing type that's offered, and even offering some innovative stuff that's not available right now in Carson City, such as new urbanism design with alleyways and that sort of thing too, that we're looking at.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Curtis?
Guess what I'm going to ask? You don't know me, but
You will.
they call me the dog park lady. And I see this as maybe the last and best opportunity to get a dog park in town, which is actually close to where the people live. We have one currently in Fuji Park, which is the south end of the city, and we have plans to put one in Centennial Park, which is the north end of the city. But we don't have anything in town, actually. So I don't know whether it's premature to even ask if it's possible to put a dog park in, or whether that's too specific at this stage, but I would like to have it on record. I would like to have it looked at.
Sure. At this point, we haven't got to that level of specifics, but I tell you, I would not be opposed to putting some language in the plan that would call for it. I love dog parks. I go to dog parks all the time with ours. So, you know, I had mentioned before that we're anticipating some large detention basin areas. Those could potentially, you know, include turf and would be great for dog parks. So there's definitely potential for that. And I was talking with Vern before the meeting. We're going to be making some tweaks to some of our text and incorporating some of staff's comments. So I don't see why that couldn't be incorporated as encouraged.
I see staff. So I see staff kind of nodding their heads, so that wouldn't be beyond possibility. Okay, yeah, the point being that, you know, we're trying to get a few parks at least. We have a lot of dog-friendly areas in town, and of course we have all the hills, but in terms of a fenced area,
Right.
there's a lot of people that want that. So,
Absolutely.
okay. Looks good to me.
Any other questions? Pardon? Commissioner Bagwell?
So, before we move to approve this plan, what I'd like to understand, and maybe for the public that's listening, is what this commission is actually recommending. Are you indicating that it's the 10-acre park, the three? I just want to be clear that everyone knows what we're doing here tonight, because there won't be another opportunity coming back here, because we're going to be passing on and saying the plan that they have is sufficient, you know, to move on. So I want to make sure that each and every one of us, what you're signing on to gives him permission to go, yep, that's good for the parks, you know. And so if you really want a dog park, then I think we need to include that in the motion. So I want to be much clearer of what we're doing here today. So when it says that we want to recommend to the commission that we are approving the plan, I would like us to go through that and say, this is what we're actually recommending. Just so it's very, very clear, and I don't want anyone to come back later at the board level and say, what are you doing? Who said you shouldn't put a park in? I'm like, well, you passed it. So I just want to go back to the record and let's talk about what we're specifically recommending, and that everyone's either okay or not okay with that.
Could I just clarify something? Wouldn't we be seeing this again when we get more of a specific plan?
All right, let me jump in. The motion as it reads in the agenda item is this is because the purview of the Parks and Recreation Commission has to do with the trails and parks. So we're asking you to approve what's in Chapter 3. There are multiple chapters within this master plan amendment, which have to do with housing types, which have to do with other things. So that is not within the purview of the Parks and Recreation Commission, but Chapter 3 is. And there are 4 specific pages in this particular document that we are asking you to approve this evening. It's Chapter 3, pages 1, 2, 3, and 4. There are other pages within Chapter 3, but they do not have anything related to parks or trails. So those are the three items that we are talking about that specifically agendized for Chapter 3. So if we want to go through Chapter 3, you know, the 4 pages of Chapter 3, we certainly can do that this evening. So we could do that. But Mike has done, I think, a great job of, one, giving you an overview of the project to give you a context within which these Chapter 3 fits. So we could certainly go through that. The other thing, as far as seeing this again, not as far as the master plan amendment goes. You will see, just like we did with Schultz Ranch, you will see coming back through when a developer comes in with a proposal that has a Parks and Recreation component or a Trails component, that will come back to you at a later time when a project comes through. Because then we can start talking about how does the park really relate to the actual development being proposed. So very similar to what we did with Schultz Ranch. In Schultz Ranch, we got a 3.6 acre neighborhood park. We've got several detention basins. It's a commission will remember, I think they were like an acre and a half. I think these particular detention basins are going to be bigger than that based on the amount of water and the amount of development. So there are going to be some fairly big opportunities in my mind, with the detention basins too. We've got some great detention basin parks around town. Mayor's Park is one, Blackwell's Park is one. So I see these having that same kind of capacity, not only to serve a stormwater detention facility and water quality issue, but being able to have maybe trails around them, or as you'd mentioned, sod or some other types of grasses for those kind of things. So I think that's a very good question on both ends. Yes, I think we need to be specific so that we understand, and what you're looking at is pages 1, 2, 3, and 4 in your packet. That's what we'll be voting on this evening. And then as far as will you see this again, not at the master plan level. Our comments tonight, whatever motion we come up with, will go. I will send an email or some sort of correspondence, written correspondence to Susan Dorpansky over planning with the outcome of what came out of this meeting this evening. So the more clear your motion, that's the better off that's going to happen. There are some editorial stuff that I will be working with Mike on as far as, in pages 1, 2, 3, and 4, there'll be a few editorial things that I'll be making, but nothing that will change the general context of what you're seeing here this evening.
Can you point us back to the pages? I'm having a hard time
Oh.
going to the 4 pages you're discussing.
Okay, it's Exhibit D.
D?
Go to Exhibit D.
There's 1.6 and then there's 3.
Right. And what I did to help give the commission context is that you have Exhibit D, and then the first, what I did is I put in Chapter 1 in Exhibit D, which gives you the overview of the development that Mike just went through. It talks about the location of the project, it talks about the vision, the land use pattern, the sense of place and community, and then also the allowed land uses. The image you see up on the screen is on page 1.1-5, and then you get into Chapter 3. Yeah, go ahead.
3-1 is what.
3-1, yes, that's where we start.
Okay, for example, if I could, the plan calls for a neighborhood park. In our master plan, we have standards. I think it's section 6.2, as I remember, in the master plan. So may I assume that when the neighborhood park is being built, for example, it will have restrooms, whatever those standards are?
That would be correct.
Okay.
Mike, I think everybody's, has questions but are generally excited about seeing something happen with this land. Representing the school district, and I know you've had conversations probably with Mr. Stokes and Mark Kornick and all them. One of the things I see that's just for discussion now really is, if you've ever seen the high school and it's like 20 minutes in the morning and in the afternoon, cars come from every direction and are sitting there at every angle.
Yep.
And that's going to have an impact to your development in terms of coming in from the east.
Correct.
And so, I guess one is just thinking out loud now, provisions to accommodate that kind of traffic so that you don't have something set up to where, you have houses or something sitting over there and it's nothing but traffic congestion that people are going to inevitably come back to you and everybody else to complain about.
Right.
And I don't have a question in mind, I'm just kind of bringing that up.
Oh, no, in fact, it's funny you should mention that, because many, many moons ago, I won't give away my age, but when I was in college, I lived right across the street from the high school, and there was little townhomes over there. And it was bad then, and that was
It hasn't gotten
20
better.
plus years ago. But Yeah, our traffic engineer has done very extensive analysis, and we have some improvements, and that's part of the reason why you see that big collector road.
Right.
Is to alleviate some of that traffic and shift it to the east. Within the project itself to kind of get that circulation going. But yeah, that's a very key consideration in our design.
And then just out of curiosity, as far as the park goes, and maybe it's a question for Roger, since Sean's not here, I'm kind of bringing it up, but when I help out with cross-country and whatnot and track, and the high school's in a unique location in terms of getting somewhere off of paved roads, and the park creates a nice area for, kids to maybe utilize, and they can hold practices there and whatnot. Will the parks, there'll be probably a joint use thing possibly going on, but will that park be, as a neighborhood park, be usable, say, by the high school?
Yeah, I don't see why it wouldn't be. First of all, it's a public park, and the schools use our facilities currently, so, and in fact, if you're talking about for cross-country training, you've got a pathway, from the high school that leads to that park, and then, you could have they could run all the way up to the northern boundary and back, so there wouldn't be, I don't see any problem with that at all.
No, and I didn't think so. I was just kind of bringing it up for the record. It's kind of a nice opportunity. We struggle to get the kids on the east side, really up to Prison Hill or somewhere where we don't have to run them on the asphalt, and in traffic. So that just presents a nice opportunity for the high school to work with the city and make sure it can in fact be shared by everybody.
Any other questions or comments?
I guess I just have a question about saying that right now you're just going through the provisions of getting the FEMA allowance and that kind of type stuff, and you haven't actually done design. Is it unrealistic for us to ask, as part of this motion to move forward, to go to the Planning Commission, that we can see it after it's been designed so that we can have some input? It's a little bit hard right now just to think hypothetically about what park features and what it looks like when I haven't really even seen plans for the development.
As Vern mentioned earlier, you'll be seeing the plans as they're developed. Yeah, just as we did with Schultz Ranch, we brought the plans back, got the input from the Park and Recreation Commission. We'll be doing the same thing with the plans as they're developed.
Okay, so to be clear, Commissioner Bagwell's point about making sure that a dog park would be in there isn't necessary right now, because we are going to see it again, and we would be able to have input at that point.
I mean, you can do it either way. You can put it in now and say that, the Park and Recreation Commission, approves a plan with the recommendation that a dog park be included in the plan. I mean, you certainly do that, and then as the plans are developed, you'd have an opportunity to have some input onto the design itself as well.
No, I understand, and it's fine that we can make a recommendation now, but we still have another opportunity to make more recommendations.
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
I'm just going to make the comment that the earlier that developers and people that are working on plans know that something is important, it's easier for them to put it in the plan to begin with. And that's why I want to stress to everyone, the more information we can provide Mike and his team now, it will be drawn in. You have a better opportunity for it to happen. And so I'm just making that recommendation, if it's something that you really want, that we let them know that. And it's just a recommendation, but it helps.
And I don't think, should be speaking for the developer, but I'm sure the developer really doesn't care, what type of park it is to a certain extent. They're going to make sure that everything fits, relatively where it should be within the development. And as Mike mentioned, there's going to be ample drainage retention pond areas that will be served as possibly as a dog park.
But not the wettest city chair. I mean, some are swimmers, I know, but.
Roger, I have a question. In the spirit of Commissioner Bagwell's suggestion, should we also make some mention about Commissioner Casiopa's concerns about the running tracks in the park? Would that be appropriate at this time?
You can certainly add that to your recommendation if you'd like.
I think it also helps the Planning Commission, because remember, there's several stages they're going to be doing too. And it is difficult when we have so many different master plans that all have to be coordinated. I think, again, the sooner we work. It's going to make it easier for Mike and his team. It's going to be easier for planning to already know where we're going. It would help me at the commission level to know that everyone put input in as early as possible. And so you get the best plan right off the top, and maybe Mike's team would like that, because it's always better when everyone agrees.
Yeah, and we are open to all kinds of ideas. I love the dog park idea. We were happy to include that. Some language that talks about the circulation to get down from the high school to the park. And yeah, I think we have some of that language in there already, but if we need to kind of enhance it, we can. I can tell you from the developer's perspective, we look at the parks as a huge feature of the community, a huge selling feature of the community. So that's one issue that we don't have a problem really kind of making sure they're done right.
Does anyone want to take a crack at making a motion? Public comment on that, Betty? Please. Alrighty then.
I'll make a motion.
Alrighty.
I recommend to, let's see, for possible action, to move forward the approval of the Lompa Ranch North Specific Plan Areas Park and Trail components as specified in Chapters 3. Specifically for us, it's 3.1 through 3.4 of the Master Plan Amendment to the Planning Commission, and specifically, we'd like a dog park to be included, special routes, I guess enhanced for traffic flow to and from the high school. And I also would recommend considering maybe 50% paved and 50% dirt trails. So there's both, people have a variety of like running, walking type surfaces to walk on.
Any second?
I'll second.
The dog lady needs to second.
Yeah.
She gets the honor. Sorry.
Okay, all those in
It
favor?
used to be called the restroom lady.
Aye. Aye. The motion carries.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you so much.
Yes, nice project.
All right.
And Brett, working with developers, it's kind of nice to hear 50/50. You don't have to pave the whole thing.
Yeah, we like bark. We like bark.
Like
trails.
bark. All right. Moving on to item 3E, to recommend to the Board of Supervisors approval of a grant application submittal to the Nevada Department of Wildlife for a vault toilet restroom and associated site improvements for the rifle and pistol range, and to authorize the chairperson to sign a letter of support for the project. This is Vern and Scott. Scott, you going to come on up?
Well, Scott was only going to come up if I got into trouble.
Oh, okay. Well, let's,
Scott, you might as well come on.
Oh, ouch. 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 But we'll take a run at it. I'll take a stab at it, and then we'll see what we got to do. For my staff report, I'll just again read for anyone who's watching at home just kind of the context of what we're working at here. Is the Parks and Recreation Department staff is preparing to submit a second grant application to the Nevada Department of Wildlife in March for a vault toilet, restroom, and associated site amenities for the rifle and pistol range. I put into your packet an Exhibit A, which gives you a view of the rifle and pistol range area, as well as some visuals of what this restroom would look like, as well as also some real quick, some construction documents that give you a little more information of what we're looking at. The restroom itself is going to be have two sides, a men and a women's side, that will be able to accommodate the use that's happening out there. The vault toilet, as I mentioned, will have both men's and women's side restroom. The project will include a vault toilet. It'll include clearing and grubbing of the necessary area around the site that we select, some site grading, parking lot. We're going to have a concrete parking lot pad and sidewalk to the restroom for ADA accessibility, and then, of course, the required striping and signage for ADA compliant parking. The NDOW grant requires a 25% non-federal city match. This match will come from one project partner. At the time when I wrote the staff report, we had had discussions last year with the Sheriff's Department about having them being a part of this project. Unfortunately, in talking with Sheriff's Department staff, that money is not going to be available like we had hoped last year when we were talking about this. So our partner, our loan partner at this particular point is the Carson City Foundation for Parks and Recreation. The North Sierra Ladies Gun Club had a fundraiser not too long ago, and they raised $3,454, which we will use as part of our match. And then, of course, the remaining balance of what's going to be necessary is going to be coming from the Parks Capital Rifle and Pistol Range Project account. We are starting to ramp up right now to begin working on this new grant application for February, so we can get this thing put together in February. The deadline is March 11th, 2016. Will be, as the motion indicates, we will be going to the Board of Supervisors to get their approval, but we're looking for a recommendation from you at this point, hopefully for moving this grant forward. Part of the reason we're doing that is that the city's grant policy requires any grant application over $25,000 to be approved by the Board of Supervisors prior to a grant application submitted by staff. Our current estimate right now, without not really having a site plan per se, is we're looking between $55,000 and $60,000 for this project, and that $15,000, of course, would be city match, and $45,000 would come from the NDOW grant if we would get it. So those are just kind of rough numbers at this particular point. We'll be refining those numbers as we get closer to the deadline for the grant application, but we've had some discussions with Public Works, and they feel comfortable that that range of $55,000 to $60,000 is certainly within what this would cost. So we're feeling pretty comfortable with that number at this point, at this level in the process. So anyway, that's a quick overview of what we have, and I'd be more than happy to take any questions.
Commissioner Cacioppo?
Sure.
Did you have some?
Yeah. So, Vern, how comfortable are you? I know when we talk about grants and whatnot, this doesn't seem like it's a big O&M cost to the city, but when I think about city services to accommodate any improvements, have we factored that in, and what kind of projected cost is it to the city?
Well, that's where I'm going to flag Scott out, because he's the guy that deals with these maintenance costs.
You don't want to get in trouble.
And I don't want to get in trouble.
I've told Vern to stay out of operations, so I better come in and bail him out. For the record, Scott Fahrenbrick, Deputy Director. As far as O&M costs, it's going to be a positive impact to O&M. I mean, basically, the Carson Rifle and Pistol Club, their volunteers will maintain whatever is needed with the restroom, which is, it's a fairly low maintenance item. But the fact that we are getting people out there, we're trying to change the culture of that facility, because we have a lot of people that are doing things out there that they're not supposed to be doing. And so by making these improvements, if you go out there right now, you'll see the roof falling off of the shelter. You'll see things in disrepair. And so we're slowly trying to make these improvements. You know, we talked about the security gates before, and the fact that we want to keep people out from the dusk to dawn hours when they're not supposed to be there tearing things up, and then have that presence out there during the day. The more people that use the range, the easier it will be to maintain, because people are taking refrigerators out there, they're taking microwaves, stoves, and they're shooting them up, and they're not supposed to be doing that. So the more law-abiding citizens, for lack of a better term, that are out there using the range, the better off we're going to be. And then down the road, when we build the multi-purpose meeting room, classroom facility, which is our ultimate dream out there, it's going to be a really nice facility out there.
Commissioner Bagwell?
So I just wanted to comment that I signed a check and deposited it with the foundation for an additional $2,756 for the range. So you have that as additional match money this last week.
Give me that number again, please.
$2,756.
$56. Okay, that's.
Some odd pennies, and I can't remember
Right.
that. So.
And
Forget the pennies.
No, that's fine, that's fine. No, that definitely helps us a lot. So, and that is earmarked for this restroom.
It was specifically earmarked to the
Okay.
Pistol Range restroom.
So
yes.
we're going to be ending up with over a $5,000 match. That's wonderful.
All right, any other questions or comments?
Just one more quick question. It's not a concern, but when you were saying you need ADA parking, how much ADA parking is required out there currently? Do you, one, two spots, or are we
We're
just
looking at
providing it
just
as a
two spots.
courtesy?
We're just,
Okay.
the range itself has already 2 spots identified for handicapped access, and we have an existing ramp that takes you up to the upper elevations where the shooting stations are. The current thinking right now is we would be directly south of those ADA spots, but we want to be able to, for people who are having challenges from a mobility standpoint, to be able to get there. The other thing is that with the pistol bays down further to the east, anybody who's going to have to use the restroom is still going to have to drive down. So if someone is in a wheelchair or has mobility challenges from there, if those 2 spots are taken up with the existing range, we're going to need more spots for them to use. So I know we're just trying to be as accommodating as we can for, that community of physically challenged folks. And so if we're a little bit over what code requires, I don't think that's an issue.
Commissioner Long?
I just had a question. I know you've mentioned it's tough to, there's a lot of people doing things they shouldn't out there, but would coming up with some sort of organized area where people can take all their junk out there and shoot it and then just organize it so they can get rid of it when they're done be beneficial? But I know I spent a lot of time running around, and I see a lot of stuff that's hauled off in the middle of nowhere and chewed it up. So I feel like if we made it easier for people to go shoot their stuff up, maybe they won't go out and do, so it's, I know it sounds a little strange, but it's something to consider. I know right now we're just mainly talking about a bathroom that's gonna help improve it, but that'll help you get more people out there, and then they can shoot their stuff up. And then the dump's not that far away, and they can go recycle when they're done. So it's just a thought.
We've had testimony in the past from a gentleman who was concerned because the porta potties and such were being shot up out there. What are the chances of this not being shot up?
Well, I'm not going to promise that, but one of the things we are doing with this particular structure is we have a choice of materials. And in talking with the product representative, he is recommending actually a concrete poured facility versus a block facility. And the reason for that is that if they do take shot, and he actually sent me pictures of what it looks like when you shoot these structures, because I wanted to see what it looks like. It's from a maintenance perspective, if somebody does decide to shoot at the facility and damage it that way, it's easier for us to repair being concrete versus masonry block. So that's part of the reason that we've gone that direction. We are hoping, as Scott says, we're trying to change the culture out there. I would hope that would not happen. We're going to just be spending, but I can't promise you that people have this crazy mindset that they can shoot anywhere and anyhow they want. The sad part about it is if they start shooting at the restroom, there's not a backdrop behind it. I mean, there's no really backdrop. It's just a large, flat, open space behind it. So whereas if you're shooting on the range, you're shooting into a hillside. Where if they turn and shoot toward the bathroom, if they miss the bathroom, it becomes that bullet can go a long ways, unfortunately. So I don't know, Scott, you want to weigh in on this?
One of the things that we implemented also with the Carson Rifle and Pistol Club is range safety officers. So you'll see them out there with their vest, they're marked accordingly, and they go out and they enforce the safety rules of the range. And that's part of the use agreement between the city and the Carson Rifle and Pistol Club. And so between that measure and also the security gates, because a lot of the areas at that facility that when they get shot up is during the hours of dusk to dawn, at nighttime hours, that's when they're going out and doing that. Typically during the day when people are out there, that sort of thing does not happen. It's when the people leave, that's when they come back out and tear up the place and do the damage that they do. So we think that that's going to go a long way towards resolving that problem.
Any additional comments or questions from the commissioners?
I'd like to add one more thing, just real quick, just for clarification, is that if this does go forward related to the recommendation to the board, we will, later this month, we will get together with the new chair, and I will go ahead and get you a letter of support. If this moves forward here tonight, we'll come up with a nice letter of support that we'll put into the grant packet to move it forward. When we submit the grant packet, we'll include yours. We have some support letters from the rifle and pistol clubs out there too, so I'd like to be able to do that. It's just not in your packet tonight. I just wanted to let you know that we'll take care of that with you offline.
All right, any public comment on this item? All right, in that case, do I have a motion?
I move to recommend to the Board of Supervisors approval of a grant application submittal to the Nevada Department of Wildlife for a vault toilet restroom and associated site improvements for the rifle and pistol range, and to authorize the chairperson to sign a letter of support for the project.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Aye. The motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vern. Thank you, Scott. We appreciate it. All right, let's move on to item 3F, to recommend to the Board of Supervisors approval of staff's FY 2016/17 capital improvement budget request. And I believe, Roger, you handed something out before the meeting?
Yep, I'll go over both of that for you. While you were discussing the other subject, I was looking up my staff report and realized that this is probably the same staff report I've been giving you for about 7 years because of the recession and the lack of a. Yeah, just change the dates, basically. But I am going to go over with you, attached at Exhibit A is our staff's recommendation for the 2015-16 fiscal year for our capital improvement, or CIP, budget request. And we've listed those in prioritized order. We get together as a departmental staff and talk about all the projects and equipment that we feel like we need to move forward in the coming year. A lot of these are projects that have been on list for several years now, simply because, as I mentioned in my staff report, we really haven't had a capital improvement budget citywide since about 2008. We've been on a kind of a break and fix process. So, these projects are basically, most of them are kind of maintenance projects or projects to replace worn out equipment and a lot of this equipment and a lot of these improvements have been deferred over several years. The projects that reach normally the highest priority are projects that improve operational efficiency, have potential for outside funding, such as grants, and also are considered a high priority. So those are, kind of where we're at. The Exhibit A lists those in priority order. I'll go through these and kind of explain them to you. I do have some staff members here that can come up and assist with the projects that relate to their operations. Our highest priority really is a Toro mower replacement, a riding mower. We haven't bought a new mower, I think, probably in about a dozen years almost, and our fleet is wearing out. If we don't replace a mower, we're gonna have lawns that aren't going to be mowed on a timely manner. It's going to delay our mowing rotation. Yes, so it's one of our it's our highest priority in this coming fiscal year to replace the mowers. And of course, if we don't get the turf mowed on a timely manner, and particularly in the case of athletic fields, then we have a safety issue if the grass is too long.
How many mowers is this?
Scott, no, that's one mower.
That's one
That's
mower?
one mower.
60,000
Yeah.
for one mower?
Is it an industrial strength one?
Well, yes, it is. It's not a hand mower, it's a riding mower. Yeah.
But it's red and turbocharged.
The turbocharged, that's
Yeah. No, that's one mower.
60,000.
Yep. The other one is to resurface the 50-meter pool. That is the floor surface of the pool. That needs to be resurfaced. That has been on on our list for several years. We're getting to the point where it's in dire need of replacement. The third one is replace wireless intercom for the Bob Boldrick Theater. This is an intercom that is used by the staging crew so they can communicate to each other. Eric Klug is in the audience back here if you'd like to come up and maybe talk a little bit more about that and one of the other items here. This is basically, I'll let Eric kind of go into more detail, but we're losing our broadcast spectrum.
Eric Klug, Recreation Program Manager for the Community Center and Bob Boldrick Theater. So 2 items on there, just to kind of go over both of them, is the wireless intercom and the wireless mics. The wireless intercom is used by the crew to communicate the different positions on when lights need to come up and what set pieces to move around. And the wireless mics are used by the performers so that the audience can hear them. Now what's happening is that the FCC, or the Federal Communications Commission, is selling off the electronic spectrum in which our systems operate. The sell-off is on March 29th. So starting on March 29th, we'll have 39 months to move our equipment out of that spectrum. So we're just asking for the funds to be able to move those. Plus our current intercom is, one half of it is 10 years old and the other half is almost 20.
If my memory serves me right, was there not money that was set aside potentially for the theater out of the infrastructure tax account? And certainly if we're going to be losing these things 39 months?
Yep.
Is this
There is money set aside in the infrastructure project. That is for the community center, and that project is is kind of in the priority list or in line with other projects that are currently going on. I think we're not talking about actually starting that project and probably the planning of that project until next year, 2017. So at that point, what we're planning on doing is we're going to go through a public process get public input through special interest groups and just the public in general to kind of get a vision of what kind of improvements we'd like to see in the community center. That may include improvements not only to the theater, but maybe improvements to this facility or the gymnasium. But this is basically for equipment that's really kind of needed now, that probably,
39 months.
yeah, probably needs to be funded before we get to that point with the infrastructure project. On here is the Lone Mountain Cemetery expansion. We're in dire need of expanding the cemetery. That's about a $45,000 project. Then we have kind of some, kind of our regular mundane kind of items such as entry mats and window covers for the community center. That's $11,185. Eric, you may want to speak a little bit about the load monitoring system. I could explain this, but you probably ought to hear it from Eric.
So the load monitoring system is a system that we can hook up to our rigging on the theater, which is used for flying sets. Currently, right now, what we have is a big list of formulas, and if anybody's interested, I can show you all the books and formulas of the mathematics that we have to go through to determine whether something is safe to fly and will it overload our systems. The load monitoring system allows us to get the live numbers, so it eliminates a lot of the mathematics and estimations that we have to do based on known variables. So we actually get the live data.
The next item is additional pool surveillance cameras. We have surveillance cameras in our pool area right now, particularly in the indoor 50-meter pool. They've been very helpful. There's been many cases where we've had to consult check the videos to find out what exactly happened when we had an incident at the pool. I can give you an example of one that's actually kind of humorous. We had a little riot break out in the top pool a few years ago between mothers, and we had mothers actually assaulting each other, and we had a little melee in the pool area. And by by recording that, we were able to give that information to the sheriff's office, and they were actually able to make an arrest. But we have some areas in the pool that we need to expand some camera coverage. The other item is a truck for the Recreation Division. The Recreation Division really does not have a maintenance vehicle, and whenever they need a maintenance vehicle, they have to work through Scott and try to free up a vehicle, which usually works okay, but Scott will tell you that he doesn't have a whole lot of vehicles either. So we have to kind of make do, but they have buses or vans and buses, but they don't have a maintenance vehicle. And there are times that they really actually have to have one. And now, as you know, that we're becoming a little bit more spread out in our operations, with the MAC being a few blocks away, there may be a need for the maintenance vehicle, increased need for the maintenance vehicle. And then the last one we have on the 10th priority is basically ADA room signs for the community center. So that total is of $458,540. At this point, pardon me?
Oh, you're reading different list.
Yeah.
It says 501.
He's got the old list.
Old list and the new list?
Oh, yeah, yep, there's,
Ice rink.
yep,
Right.
yep. Excuse me, at this point, we don't know what the capital improvement project budget may consist of, the dollar amount, but this is our priority. I know you understand that all the other departments are developing their own priorities as well. The second list that I gave you is kind of maybe give you a little bit more complete picture of projects and needs in the department. If you look down under the F-15, 16 carryovers, these are carryovers that the finance department has projected that we'll have. We have decided to take a look at some of these carryovers and use that money to pull some of our long-standing capital projects off the capital improvement project list and fund them through these funding sources, quality of life capital and quality of life maintenance and residential construction tax. As you know, the Park and Recreation Commission has made a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors to make improvements out of Ross Gold Park using residential construction tax. That's going to the Board of Supervisors this Thursday. There's another additional $25,963 that we will probably move towards that project as well. So again, you can kind of see I can run down these. These are items that we can, for the most part, begin working on immediately. We need some new thermal pool covers in the pool. That's a $25,000 item. We have projected about $80,000 in MAC project add-ons. Now, that's on there in case we don't have enough funds at the end of the project to take care of some of the items that we have found out that we need. For instance, we have the 4 large windows around the walking track. They're great windows. They add a lot of light to the facility. They open up the facility to the outdoor views, but they also provide an opportunity to have sun glare on the gym floor. And so we're looking at some mechanical window shades. I think the cost of that is around $16,000, $17,000 so that we can adjust the light that comes into the facility. We do have landscaping work that by our permit for the project, our special use permit, we need to complete, and that includes the landscaping in the back of the facility. It's unclear right now if there's going to be enough money in the budget at the end of the project to make those to add those items to it. If there is, then we will use that project money, and then that money will become available for other projects. We're looking at adding an additional $1,300 for professional services in the quality of life. It seems like we're always come up short in terms of we need surveying or some engineering work, for future projects. Quality of life maintenance, we have about $43,000 that will be carried over. You can forget about number 1, the artistic fence bill. That's already been taken care of. That was a fence that was included and constructed on the T-ball fields over at Governor's Field. That's been taken care of. You probably remember we've had the pool slide refurbishing on the CIP projects for several years. We'd like to just go ahead and take care of that through quality of life maintenance. We think that's appropriate because the pool was a quality of life project. And we do need additional park maintenance vehicles. The Kubota is like a little four-wheel drive vehicle that, a utility vehicle, and you can also get a snow conversion kit put on the front of it for snow removal. That's about $18,000. An important one now that we're increasing our trail system, and we're getting lots of requests to have trails, have the snow removed from trails in the wintertime. And we're actually having a winter this year. You know, we haven't had to have this in the last couple of years, but hopefully we're into a trend now where we're going to have a more consistent winter. And then that would leave about $5,300 in an undesignated account that would be available in case things came up during the course of the year that were unplanned. Pardon me? Emergencies and that type of thing. So that pretty much kind of covers it. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer any questions that you may have.
Commissioner Cassiopo?
Yeah, since Eric's still here, I know we talked about this, we talked about the stage, you know, the support structure and how it's real expensive to redo the orchestra pit. But, you know, since we can't get all this stuff covered anyway, we might as well ask for it. But is there like a retrofit or something we can do? I mean, we talk about a lot of the bolts and stuff under that's supporting the stage are stripped out. And so in some cases, while it's generally safe and we have bolts holding it, there are some pieces being held together by nothing more than friction. You know, is there a lesser temporary fix to make sure that orchestra pit is safe and secure and so we can really do something?
Once again, Eric Klug, Recreation Program Manager. We would have to get a structural engineer in to take a look and see what could be done with what's existing. But
I'm thinking, because I'm thinking just little things like the brackets we have that support everything, if, you know, reconfiguring the brackets or something and being able to core in some new bolt holes and threads to just kind of fix the stuff that isn't working. You know, I'm not talking about high dollar stuff, but.
yeah, well, that would still need to be a structural engineer. They were the ones that laid out the bracket pattern, and so we would need to get them to approve a new bracket pattern.
Just something to consider.
Yeah.
You know, the improvements or the conversion of the orchestra pit is one of those items that we've talked about in the 1/8 cent sales infrastructure tax, using, you know, that money for that purpose. We've looked at, when Mitch Ames was here, we actually priced out an automatic power or mechanical orchestra pit cover, because right now it's basically, you know, brawn labor. You know, it's, as you know, it's, you know, using your backs and arms and lifting that thing out of there, and we're concerned about the safety, you know, of that type of system as well. But that's a very expensive system to convert to.
Yeah, and I get that, and that's why I was trying to think a lesser fix. Yeah, if it requires a structural assessment, I agree with that, but I think as far as a line item goes,
Yeah.
you know, I'd be curious what something like that might run and just put it on there so that it's something that doesn't get forgotten about over time.
Certainly something we can look into.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions from the commissioners? Commissioner Curtis?
Thank you. Yeah, it's going to take a minute. Little dangerous when you've sat on a body for many years. When we used to look at capital improvements, I'm just going to show you this. We got a decision packet. And so here is the list of the capital improvement projects that the Parks Department believed needed to be done. And they had them in A's where need to be done now, B's where it would be nice, C's if you have any money left over. We were asked then to take this list and out of it prioritize 5 projects that we thought were below $15,000 we should do, and 5 projects that cost more than $15,000. And then staff did likewise. And then we compared notes and we literally came up with the list. But obviously, there's a number of projects, and I'm sure, hopefully, some of these have been done. But a lot of them haven't been because they're actually on your list. I would like more information when it comes to this, because there's needs all over town. Maybe we see things a little differently than staff, maybe we see things differently amongst ourselves, but the idea is that we have choices here. And maybe all of these are projects that really need to be done, but when we're looking at carryovers and things like that, I think there's a lot of these projects that have been on the list for years that should be looked at. And then I have another document here that was done. I don't have a date on it, but I don't think it was that long ago. It starts with fiscal year 13-14, and it's literally a 5-year plan. So, for example, if I'm looking at year 15-16, which is the year we're in, there's money, for example, for the Fuji Dog Park improvements, $7,000, and then again in FY 17-18, another $7,000. And since we just got through talking about a dog park, I don't know where or what the developer might be doing. He might say, here's the land, that's all we're gonna do. If you want a fence, you're gonna have to put it up yourselves. But I would like an opportunity to look at a list like this and say, you know, what's happened? And what about these versus these priorities that you just gave us tonight? So I would appreciate it in the future if we could start getting a more complete list of your needs, so we could have, I think, a more knowledgeable discussion on all of this. So that's just, you know, comment as you will, but I know it's more work. However, if you happen to have this list still someplace, it's just probably a matter of giving it to us again, because again, probably a lot of these projects haven't been done. So those are my comments anyway. If I compare some of these things to some of these things from my point of view, you know, a truck is nice, but you can get by with one. Maybe that 40,000 could go to something over here. So.
You know, and I understand those comments. I think you remember we, even a few years ago, put together a 20-year capital improvement list. And all these items that are on here are on that 20-year list, pretty much, unless there's been a really dire need that's developed since we put together that 20-year list. But it was really kind of, in a lot of ways, since about 2008, it's been an exercise in futility, because we knew that we're going to be lucky if we got any capital improvement, money at all. It looks like now things are starting to pick up a little bit, and there may be an opportunity to have more capital improvement money available for the departments to select from. But these are items that have been typically, as I mentioned before, carried over year after year after year. We're getting to the point of, in the staff's opinion, that we have to do something about these, and this was a priority that we put together. Now, if you have other projects out there and other items that you'd like to offer, we can certainly offer that. I think as we move forward in the future and our budget situation looks rosier in the city, we may be able to go back to a little bit longer-term planning as we did in the past. Right now, it's a case of trying to take care of what we think are the most desperate items at this point.
Well, I'll just repeat, it's the idea that we have some choices, though. In other words, we can do our job as the commission, which doesn't mean we're just going to say yes to, everything you present to us, because we may have heard other things in the community, or, for some reason we have other ideas. For example, on the improvements for the Bob Boldrick Theater, you said, on the question 8 part, no, the 8-cent part. Well, maybe you could do some of those projects with that. You're saying that, these things are going to go right now, and then let's get them done. Rather than taking money out of question 18, capital projects. And I know there's more money in capital, question 18, we all know that, because sales taxes are doing well. So that kind of takes care of opportunities to use any carryover money for anything else, if we're not even looking at that yet, but we're using the carryover for some of these projects.
And again, this is our projected carryover in the capital, or in the quality of life budgets, which you have in front of you.
Commissioner Long?
Yeah, Roger, I just, it echoes Commissioner Curtis's comments a bit as well, but I was looking also at the capital improvement request from last year, and there are several items in, and I realize some of the, in respect, the lesson of futility year after year, not seeing all that done. Why do we look so far out if I can't do it? It needs to be done yesterday kind of thing. But couple of questions were, there's several items that were listed last year that I don't believe were done, but they aren't on the list this year, and they're towards the top of the list. And I don't know, do you, first of all, do you want me to point out a couple examples, or are you familiar with those?
I'm sure I'm familiar with them, but you can bring them up. I can tell you that our staff looked at the requests that we had last year in the formation of setting these priorities. If there is an item on there that was a high priority, and you don't see it here, it's probably because in their opinion, the items that are listed here today are now become a higher priority. But there may be some items on there that we're actually funding. We are finishing up a couple projects. We have one, a resurfacing of the floor area in the pool, in the therapy pool. I think this project is just about going to begin. We have a project for the outdoor pool for some tile and deck replacement that is earmarked for April, and that's been approved by the Board of Supervisors as well. So we have a couple of those out there that you may be referring to that are on that list that are in the work, currently in the works right now. That's why they're not on the list that we presented with you tonight.
Okay, those were a couple. The microphones in this room were on there as well. There was a top pool thing, a 9/11 memorial, and then also Centennial Park with the upper and lower sections. I know some of that had to do with the ADA stuff, is that right? So that's been done.
Some of that has been taken care of by the ADA project that we had for Centennial Park.
Okay.
And a couple of those others, you mentioned the play feature in the tot lot pool. Kind of right now that's a project that we would love to put into the pool because we think it would generate some excitement in the pool area, and maybe actually even increase the use of the pool. But we're at the point right now where we think we have basic pool maintenance that we need to take care of before we buy something new for the pool. You had one other one you listed there too, I think
there's a 9/11 memorial, which I remember about a year ago when that came up, and matching funding and all this. And it was lower on the priority list, but it fell off the list, and I just wasn't sure.
One of the reasons that fell off the list is, you're right, that was put in there to be a matching program with a fundraising effort. That was kind of a personal project of our former fire chief, and since he's left, there hasn't been maybe as much interest in that. But basically, staff felt that, I think there were maybe about $20,000 in that earmarked for that project.
I think upwards of 80.
Oh, was it 80?
80,000.
Staff felt that there's no use tying up this money for a project that we're waiting for, for matching fund when it could be used for something that's in dire need, for instance, a $60,000 mower.
Or that already has matching funds.
That already has funding available. So that's why it's on a lower list right now at this point. It doesn't mean the project is not going to be pursued. It's just at a lower priority list in our estimation.
Okay. What's your gut feel for the roughly $500,000 that we're talking about of prioritized capital improvements? Do we have a feel for roughly how much you think might get approved for this year?
At this point, we don't. We should have those numbers probably fairly soon, in the next couple of weeks, I think, probably in February.
Okay.
In middle of February.
So I said the good news is there's actually several of those items that you mentioned that are actually moving forward. That's good news, because I haven't seen that since I've been on the board. So that's a good feeling. And the MAC got done, so that's actually a positive feel. So, all right, thanks.
Thank you.
Commissioner Curtis?
Yeah, I just, forgot about the feature in the tot pool. I think we talked about this last year too. It would be nice to, out of this list, to have one project that really, the public would appreciate. I understand, we need mowers, so we're not plowing through, 10 feet of grass in the parks and that kind of thing, but it would be nice to have something for the public, something like that. And that's why I'm saying if we have more projects to look at least we could have a discussion on it. If Brett hadn't mentioned it, we wouldn't even be discussing it, because I forgot about it, frankly. So again, I don't know, can we delay this? Do we have to do this today?
Well, you really do, because our next meeting is going to be in April, and we need to have our submittal, put into, well, we need to submit our request now. We've already, we need to turn this list into the finance department, so for their consideration.
Before April.
Yeah. Now, and again, I agree with a lot of what you're saying, Don. I mean, I would really like to get to the point where we can have a more comprehensive list and that we can really go through all these, we need to go back. We've got those forms, we need to go back and do a little check off on what has been completed and what hasn't been in there, and what is still viable and what isn't. But I think that's going to be at a point where when we have a realistic expectation that we're going to be able to fund more than we can. Because if we're looking at the same funding levels that we had last year, we only really got 2 capital improvement projects last year, out of all these requests. If we're in the same boat, we can probably realistically expect to get 1, 2, 3, or 3 of these projects. So I guess what I'm saying is we could give you a mountain of paperwork, but the idea is that we're probably only going to have 1 or 2, maybe 3 of those projects have a chance of getting funded.
Let's hope it's better than that. On the ice rink panels, are we certain we're going to have an ice rink?
Well, we're pretty certain we're going to have one, yeah. I mean, as you know, there was a proposal out there to have a, what was the project called off the Nugget? The Capitol Mall project. And, pardon me?
Capital Mall North.
Yeah, and the part of that proposal had an ice skating rink. Now, that project, I understand, is on hold. I think it's pretty safe to say that the Arlington Square location is probably going to continue as our ice skating rink, probably for the foreseeable future, at least in the short term. Part of that project had a parking garage that was located on it. My understanding is that's not going to happen. And so, that lot, if the Nugget is continuing and willing to work with us to provide that as an ice skating location, that'll probably be, I think, our ice skating rink here for the next couple of years anyways.
Commissioner Glenn has a question.
Not a question, just a comment. I just want to, I know, and I don't want to misinterpret what Commissioner Curtis said, but, from someone whose family has used the tot pool and from someone whose family uses the parks all the time, I greatly appreciate the fact that we need a new mower. Sometimes the grass is long and it is dangerous or unsafe for some of the teams to play on them, or suboptimal. So I think saying that families greatly appreciate a top pool versus a new mower or vice versa is an unplaced statement without getting input from those families. Just a quick comment on there.
Any other comments? Commissioner Bagwell?
So what I'd like to discuss is to try and bring this home is the order in which these projects are listed. And so I tend to want to look at more what Commissioner Glenn had to say there is, so the mower we recognize we're going to have, or it's going to stop its use. And so do we want to look at the order that's here? Because one of the things is we haven't seen the numbers on the ice rink to whether or not, so I'll say this, why would I put in another $42,500 if I can't verify that I can amortize that and recover its cost? And so I find it difficult here to place the ice rink in the second position versus do we have a liability issue that's much higher with the swimming pool? And so why would not the resurface of the pool be sitting in the second position? And so I think that we would spend our time well here looking. So I even look at the entry mats and the window covers, entry mats. Is that not so people will wipe their feet and not fall and slip? I think that's much more of a liability and an issue that we face. So why isn't that moved up? And frankly, it's $11,185. Looks like a much higher potential to get funded also. So why would you place it number 7? And so I think we should spend our time here really ranking what we want, because if we're only going to get 3 or 4, they should be the best 3 or 4 items that we get.
And, you bring up a really good point, because we could have one item funded, and it might be a very expensive item. Right. And so I think, the question is, do you want to put all your eggs in one basket, so to speak? Do you want to put all your eggs in your basket to resurface 50-meter pool at 130 and maybe not receive any other projects? So it's, it's a little bit of a game of finessing it, too, as well.
Laura, did you have any specific order that you would suggest these items go in, or would you like all the commissioners to take a shot at it with you?
What I'm looking at is resurface the 50-meter pool. What I don't have here is a background of why this is sitting here. And I know, and I really do believe that staff does a great job, and so I don't want to state that, but you're making it difficult here for me to say, well, why should the pool be, you didn't give me any data. Is this something that the resurface, are we at a point a year away, we'd have to close the pool if we don't resurface it? So can we wait 2 years? What is the expected useful life, and why are you saying that we need to resurface the pool?
Well,
if this makes sense, what I'm trying to get to is you have to help me know why we're putting them in this order. What do we want to do at the cemetery? Does this mean we can't bury people anymore? Maybe that's got to move first. That's a public health issue.
Let's face it, it's not going to go away.
No, and it's not going to go away. It's something we have to address. So I think I need just a little more detail from you guys but you see what I'm trying to get to here is you have to help me know, Laura, you really have to do this in there's 2 years, and then that's done. We have to close it, the liability's too high.
Commissioner Long?
Can I recommend maybe we just focus on 5 and see if we can get 5 here to prioritize those, and then maybe make a motion based on that? Does anybody object to that?
Any other comments on
and then-
Commissioner Long's suggestion?
Sorry. I don't have a problem with that. I mean, I think it's a good idea to prioritize these things, and when I'm looking at prioritizing them, I like your point about the ice rink. I mean, I like the ice rink. We don't know how much money it's generating it for this year, but I really want to focus on, I think, if we have to prioritize things, I like the idea of prioritizing them in terms of safety. Yeah. And I think if we're doing that, yeah, I'd probably like to at least add for consideration, and I don't know if it makes a top 5, but we're talking about safety. I come back to the orchestra pit and think, how much is a structural analysis of the existing system and a repair of the existing system going to be? I'm thinking it maybe falls in that plus the repairs, and I could be way off, could be in the $10,000 to $15,000 range when we're just talking about simple repairs. And so I'd like it to just, be there for consideration. But in the end, whether it gets put on the list or not, I think I would want to focus on, what are safety items versus, items that need to be done but aren't necessarily an issue of public safety.
Commissioner Long?
Roger, would it be, back to what Commissioner Bagwell mentioned, could we quickly do that? I feel like we're kind of all in agreement. The Toro Motor, I think it needs to happen. The parks are a huge asset to the community, bringing people in from all over. I think it needs to happen. So to me, that one would stay where it's at. The others, the entry mats and safety type things, are we saying that the mats here just don't work anymore, or is it also like a beautification type of thing where obviously we want it to be presentable to the public, but are they essentially past their useful life?
Well, it's a little bit of both. I mean, they're functional, but we need to replace them. And again, I think we have Eric here, he can probably speak, probably a little.
Eric Klug, Recreation Program Manager. Yeah, the mats are well past their useful life, and if you look at some of them, the edging has even started to break off, creating trip hazards.
So, yeah, in my opinion, like that one would move up. The 50-meter pool, I know, this may be a slightly biased because I use the pool, but quite frankly, the deck's pretty gross. And I know I talk to people all the time that come down from Reno to swim in the pool, so people are coming from other places and using it. And one question I had is, does that 50-meter resurface include the locker rooms as well? Because ultimately, I would think that those need to be done as well.
No, this is actually the resurface, the 50-meter pool is resurfacing the bottom of the pool, where it's flaking, flaking off.
Okay,
Yeah.
so.
It's not the surface on top.
Okay, so maybe, so that's fine, maybe that might fall further down on the list, but I would recommend maybe even looking at resurfacing the actual deck as well.
So what do we need to do at the cemetery? What is the Lone Mountain Cemetery expansion? I'm sorry, I just have to learn what these are.
Again, for the record, Scott Fahrenbrook, Deputy Director. At the cemetery, we're running out of room to bury veterans. And we have about a year and a half before we run out of room to where we won't be able to do any internments on the lawn, and we will have to intern them on the dirt in undeveloped areas. So this proposal would be for taking an acre of land that the Masons, the Masonic Lodge owns quite a bit of property within the cemetery. So what they would do is they would trade us an acre of developed land for an acre of undeveloped land that we have. But the deal would be that in order for this deal to go through, we would have to develop with new irrigation and turf so that they're going to get an acre of lawn, just like what they're giving us. So in essence, what it is, it's a land swap. They give us an acre right next to our existing veteran section, and then we go further to the north, and then we would give them an acre. And so the cost, the capital improvement cost is to develop that acre of land that we would give them that they swapped us.
The alternative would be that we would develop that property and use that as an extension for the veterans' burial site, but it wouldn't be adjacent to the current veterans.
Correct. And they would just use that property because they have, if we get another acre, that's going to be good for another 10, 12 years. So if we get that acre, then they would just use that acre that we developed for them sometime in the future. And they would keep that property.
And we would have to develop our area no matter what in expense dollars. Would it be the same approximate 45,000 in turf and all that anyway? So it would behoove us to keep the section together. And again, the land swap, we'd have to do work to be able to do this no matter what.
In order to make it an apples-to-apples trade, a fair trade, yes, we'd have to do that.
And the reason for that is because the parcel that we want is adjacent to the veterans that are already buried there, and it's already developed. So we don't want to go clear to the north and have a separate cemetery section for the other veterans. So what we'd like to do is they're willing to swap out an acre for an acre if we would develop an acre for them for the future.
And so you're saying we only have a year and a half, and so by the time, if we don't fund this now, we'll run out before we can actually get it developed and done.
At some point, the city's not going to have a choice. At some point, they're not going to have a choice.
So we should move, again, unless you all disagree with me, you can. I think that should move up.
Keep in mind, too, that it may not be the most preferable option, but much of the cemetery is not developed. It's not developed in terms of turf and irrigation. And so, we do actually bury people in those dirt areas currently right now. Most of the cemetery is not turfed. So we could do that with the veterans too as well, and then come in and maybe develop it later, but that is always an option to just expand into the dirt area. Not the best option, but it is an option.
I'm sorry, I might have missed it. What's the capacity right now? Is it, do we have a year or two before it's done?
A year and a half, and that's just for the veteran section. So, and the other thing to just mention to the commission too, that's probably more of a citywide issue than a park and recreation issue, just because, the cemetery isn't under the purview of the Park and Recreation Commission. So it's on the CIP list, and it's okay to rank it, I guess. But there, you may look at the list and go, well, maybe we ought to focus on park and recreation needs first. And I'm just bringing that up.
Right.
Something to
Yes,
consider.
I'm sorry. Just looking at items 2, 3, and 6, that's, according to my math, which is not very good, $287,000. That's the ice rink panels, the resurfacing of the 50-meter pool, and replace the wireless mics. That would take us, if we didn't do those, a long ways down this list, because the other items are 11,000, 13. I also, on the quality of life items, we could even maybe consider funding some of those out of the general fund and keeping that fund for items that may come up during the year that we want to fund. So the idea is, we can prioritize this list, but we can get a bigger bang out of our buck if we don't have to do those 3 projects I mentioned.
The other option too is that we have also submitted the ice rink panels to Finance Department for consideration to be funded through the redevelopment budget as well, because the original ice skating rink was a redevelopment project. The equipment that was purchased for the ice skating rink was purchased through redevelopment. So that's another opportunity. I mean, again, there's a limited amount of resources and money, whether it's general fund, redevelopment money, or any of these funds, but there is another possible funding mechanism for those ice rink panels.
And I think,
And that's why they weren't on the list that I gave you tonight.
oh, okay.
First list.
Yeah, first listing.
Commissioner Long?
I feel like maybe that would just be one of the lower ones on the list.
Exactly. Roger, I have a question about number 11, the ADA room signs. Are we currently not in compliance with federal law, or would this just be additional signage?
Well, this would be additional signage. We currently don't have signage though for restrooms and that. For instance, ADA type signs for some of the public facilities in this building.
Are we in danger of getting our hands slapped by the feds if we don't have these signs?
Currently, we are not because we're grandfathered in, but we do need to upgrade because any changes to the facility will cause the codes to kick in. So we would have to upgrade the signage.
If we move this to a lower priority item, it wouldn't put us in any jeopardy in any way other.
Well, the nice thing about number 10, the ADA room signs, it's only a $5,500 project, and it's conceivable that we could take that out of some contingency money or undesignated money in some other fund.
I feel like it's the right thing to do.
Well, and that's quite frankly why we had it listed at the lowest priority, because we think that that's probably a project that we'd be able to fund without making a CIP request.
Okay.
But I think you're kind of getting the idea that every project here is important, and so this is where it gets really difficult to, try to make, priority choices. Each one of these projects have a level of importance connected to them.
I think that we should add the orchestra pit, at least on the list. But seeing that, talking about safety, and it sounds like I'd be scared to go inside the thing, so.
I thought that was done, actually.
And maybe I should just go look at it. Maybe Joe didn't do it justice, but it sounds a little bit dodgy.
And I think probably what we could do is we could probably add the orchestra pit. We don't know what that dollar amount would be. We can certainly do some investigation on that. Maybe add that to the list and move the ADA room signs down to, to part of our carryover, our contingency funds and the other funds.
Okay. Just not to get too sidetracked, but when we get down to the carryovers and we talked about the MAC project and the landscaping and window shades, I get the window shades as an extra. Does the landscaping fall under the CMAR's guaranteed maximum price, or is that?
That was actually valued engineered out of the project to bring the project within budget, but it's part of our special use permit. So we are committed to doing that landscaping.
Okay.
We're not sure right now if we're going to have money at the end of the project to do that. That's why we include it in the quality of life.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Do we want to take a stab at ranking these? Commissioner Long? Commissioner Bagwell?
Toro's number one? Do we
Okay.
agree on number one?
Yes.
We're 1/5 of the way there.
You're always so optimistic.
My vote would be to move the ice rinks down, so we skip that. Lone Mountain Cemetery, maybe that goes to number 2. Anybody jump in here at any point?
How about the entry mats?
I think entry mat's number 3.
Anybody adding this up, or
I
does it
am.
matter? Okay.
Well, not that yet, but future.
How about the truck?
Whereas
I
the
would
cameras.
suggest that the wireless intercom, since half of it's already broken, is my
Right,
understanding.
yeah, that, and what is it, March is our deadline?
No, we have 39.
Well,
We have 39 months.
that's right,
But
right,
it's still only half functional.
yeah.
No, it's 100% functional right now. It's just aged.
Okay,
We have 39
Yeah,
months.
39 months starting March 29th.
okay.
And we're talking about the wireless intercom, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Wireless mics in the Bob Boldrick Theater, correct?
Correct, yeah, and we're in the same spot with the mics, that they're not as old as the intercom, but we still have 39 months starting March 29th.
Oh, got it.
And I think I'd see all those, I'd like to see the whole Bob Boldrick stuff in comparison to all that we're going to look at next year to do for that, for the community center out of the 1/8 of a cent. So I'm just saying it's difficult for me to see this project separately than that project, because depending on what we're going to do with the orchestra pit, it could change what you even would do here. So I hate to do any project without knowing the other impact with the rest. So I think that can all be next year's actual plan that you're bringing forward for all of it.
It's one of the
If we have
reasons why
39
we
months.
left the orchestra pit, off the list now.
Yeah, do it
Maybe
all
what
at
we need
once.
to do is just have a,
Bob Boldrick.
maybe just have an engineering inspection of the current condition of the pit. And maybe then move from that point forward.
Yeah, and that makes sense to me. The next question I was going to ask Eric, but Lori kind of beat me to it, is, which was good, was this 30, we know we have 39 months to replace these things. What kind of lead time do we need? Is it, I mean, if we decided, if we pulled the trigger tomorrow, we could have these things in a few weeks, or is this thing kind of a long lead type item?
I've already got some budgetary quotes, so it would just be as simple, if you said tomorrow, go for it, I could probably have them here by the end of the month.
Okay. And that's what I figured, we could get them pretty quick once we decide to do them. So I like the idea of, considering all the Bob Boldrick items together. I mean, we still have to separate them, but if we know what the costs for everything are, there's a lot of needs there, so.
So are you suggesting the wireless mic would be the 5th one?
No.
No,
move
I
it
think
all- everything that Bob
we moved
Boldrick
that
off.
down.
Oh, you're going to move them all off?
Yeah, till we get a comprehensive,
Sorry.
Well, yeah, not move them off, just move them down.
Down.
And again, for me, just, I'm still trying to focus on safety, if you will.
Okay.
so wouldn't that make number 9, item 4
Yep.
then?
Yeah.
Yep, then you move up the surveillance on the
Surveillance
cameras
cameras.
is
So
4,
number 9 is 4?
Number 9 is 4 now. It's the new math.
the new math.
All right, so does anybody have a suggestion on what number 5 should be?
So I guess just to be clear, we have number 1 is the lawnmower, number 2, it would be the Lone Mountain Cemetery, 3 would be the entry mats and the window covers, and number 4 would be the additional pool surveillance cameras.
Does anybody have a suggestion for 5?
Well, what you could do is, unless I'm not getting what you're talking about with the theater, I mean, you could combine those two together and make that 5 if you wanted.
That's what I was going to actually just recommend, but
I-
Commissioner Casapo, what do you think?
I'd kind of like to be able to see I'd like to see all of it, because how much was it, 400,000 or 5?
It was up
And
there.
does that include the seats as well?
Yeah, you're talking about the project for the
Yeah.
theater, well, and it's not just the theater, it's for the community center.
Oh.
And so, that could.
So you got your signs here,
and
yeah.
We got a big building here. I mean, it could be everything from replacing the old tile floor in the gym or repurposing the gym. There's been talk about doing some renovation work in the Sierra room to make it better for board meetings and these type of meetings. There's been talk about aesthetic improvements to the lobby, acoustical work in the theater and the auditorium, replacing the seats, recarpeting, painting. So there's a lot of, at one time, Mitch and I did a little estimate on it when we first brought this up as being a 1/8 of a cent sales project. And we were looking at possibly about $2 to $2.5 million worth of renovations in this building. So 500,000 may not go very far.
Well, I would hope that that maybe we as a group can work on what should be in the community center, that you bring the whole thing together and we can prioritize at that time. If we only have 500,000, what's the best use of the dollars here? So I think that the pool should be fifth.
I was going to say pool, or how badly do we need the truck?
Well, they put the truck,
Yeah,
they put the truck further
lower.
down, so
Okay.
that's,
I think the pool is a higher
Yes.
priority. The truck is probably more realistic that we'd receive it, though.
Got it. Yeah.
that's right. How much money? How much money do we have? I agree. Not that I'm trying to help a little bit. How much money do we have here?
105.
My calculator.
Yeah, say just yell them out, I can add them up.
You can add them in your head, excellent.
Well,
No,
we
he's
don't
gonna
have
use
that
his
much time.
calculator.
It's 130.
I'm gonna use my external brain.
So you,
You've got the Toro mower at 60.
Okay.
Then you got the Lone Mountain Cemetery expansion at
That's
45,480.
105.
Okay. Then your entry mats are 11,185.
116,
116.
117.
Then you have the additional pool surveillance camera at 14,500. And that's where you are to date.
131.
So right now you're at
131, 165,
Okay.
and plus another 130.
might want to put the truck, it's up to you guys. It's really up to you guys. You might want to consider the truck as number 5 and the
Let's go.
pool is number 6.
What do we think of truck number 5, pool 6?
Okay.
And if we're lucky, pool will be on number 1 next year.
Okay.
There you go.
All right?
And then we're going to take items 4, 6, and 8, anything doing with Bob Boldrick, push them. And then we're going to see if we can fund the ADA signs out of another. And the same for the ice rink panels, we're seeing if maybe, so those are gone.
Yep.
So I think that makes a much easier list too.
Yeah, I got 180. So in your, sorry.
Go ahead.
In your report to the Board of Supervisors, could you tell them that we were at 501, now we're at 180? We really did a good job.
Realistic?
You know, we're trying to be
That you're being-
practical.
Sure. Well, it's a tough decision to make. So I just want to make sure, I'm going to go over them one more time just to make sure I have them right. Number 1 is the Toro mower. Number 2 is the Lone Mountain Cemetery expansion. Number 3 are the entry mats and window covers. Number 4 is additional pool surveillance cameras. Is that correct?
Yes.
5 is a truck for Recreation Division, and 6 is a resurface of 50-meter pool. And then in addition to that, we're looking at finding another funding mechanism for the ice rink panels, possibly redevelopment or some other fund, taking the theater request and combining them and pushing them to the infrastructure 1/8% sales tax. Okay, good work.
And Roger, I just wanted 2 more things. The ADA carryover, to see if we could get those ADA signs in over to that carryover money.
Yeah, that's the other part of it too. Yep.
And the other being, I believe last year's budget had the resurface of the pool deck. So if we could just look at maybe for the future, not for this year so much, but adding that back on some, to the capital improvements list.
Got it.
Thanks, Lee. Maybe look at all the aquatic center improvements, because there's others, isn't there? There's the tot thing, there's the resurfacing of a different pool, isn't there? Or did we do that?
Yep, that was the resurfacing of the tile and the gutters of the outdoor pool. That's a project that was funded. That'll be happening in April.
But if we could, kind of see at a glance what's needed. I know the roof is in bad shape too, isn't it?
That's already budgeted for in
Oh,
the
okay.
capital plan.
All right. Good.
Any further questions or comments? Well, then, could I entertain a motion from somebody? Public comment, I'm sorry. All right. Commissioner Curtis?
Yes, I move that we recommend to the Board of Supervisors, I don't have the wording here, but the following projects in prioritized order be funded.
Okay.
A Toro motor at $60,000. I'm sorry, I got this. Okay, 2 is
Cemetery.
the Lone Mountain Cemetery expansion at $45,480. The entry mats and window covers for the community center at $11,185. The additional, I'm sorry, is the additional pool surveillance cameras at $14,500. A truck for the recreation division for $49,000. And the resurfacing of the 50-meter pool at $130,000. And then,
Sounds good.
I think that's it.
Second?
Second.
I'll second.
All right. All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. The motion carries. Thank you. Got that in order? All right. We're going to move on to 3G for discussion only regarding the Parks and Recreation Commission's 2015 annual report that Brett Long, our former chair, will present to the Board of Supervisors this Thursday. You got
All right, so, yeah, as we kind of have decided throughout, towards the end of 2015, I think we reviewed the lists, and one of the things I think that came out of that was that we came up with, at least it was unknown to me, but there's always been a kind of an index sheet that is created all throughout the year. And so it made sense, I think, and as a commission, I think we decided that let's just use that index list as the summary for the year. And so what I plan to do on Thursday is present to the Board of Supervisors just the highlights of that list, as well as the supervisors have a copy of that list as well. But I just plan on touching on the highlights. And what I thought tonight, I would just give an overview of what I plan to go over and take any comments, if any, opinions or anything we want to add. I'm going to go down my list, which is a little different than the index, but I think it kind of highlighted the year. Carson City received the state-regulated permit by the Division of Public Behavioral Health and the out-of-school program, which I believe we were the first in the state of Nevada to get that permit, which was also, ultimately going to be a requirement by the state. So I thought that was worthy of noting. I'm just going to continue. You guys stop me if you'd like to ask some questions. The Carson City District BLM Resource Management Plan came up for review, which my understanding is it happens once every maybe about 20 years. So we, as a commission, we reviewed the process timeline, public meeting dates, recommended some comments and submitted those comments to the BLM. Also, early last year, the BLM did come here and speak and kind of answer some questions regarding that process and kind of how it's going to work. The Parks and Recreation, so we did, for 2014, the Parks and Recreation Commission reviewed the master plan, which hadn't been done in, I think, about 5 years. And Commissioner Curtis was kind enough to present that to the Board of Supervisors in June of 2015. We had a discussion of the overall condition of paved and unpaved trails maintained by the Parks and Rec. A couple, I guess, things to note is that over time, with the help of the Muscle Powered and also the Unified Pathways Master Plan, we've gotten much more comprehensive trails around the community that are linked. There's some that are still needing to be linked, but in general, kind of both paved and unpaved, we're getting there. The improved connectivity and signage, you can see it all out kind of around town, where some of them have been Eagle Scout projects and others, but we have kind of actually some documented routes. One of the concerns that I think we noted was that along with these great new trails comes ultimately planning for maintenance. And I know some of them have shown a fair amount of decay. Namely, I know in the Longview Park areas, some of those used to be, that maybe a skateboarder or a rollerblader could get through. Now, walking and running can happen, but ultimately, one of the concerns would be needing to make sure there's funding in order to repair some of those areas. The BMX lighting project was complete, and that was thanks to the in part by the Nevada State Parks and Land Conservation Fund grant. So that was nice. I know that one had been kind of in the works for a little while and got done. Centennial Park received a much-needed ADA improvements, which was, they obviously, like we just discussed, are a huge asset to the community, both to the community members and also to for tourism and the tournaments. So I think it's a good step to update our parks. It looks good when people come in, and for ADA, it is only fair that those improvements were done. The Nevada Fair was assigned to the Parks and Rec Department, and I believe we still contracted through Susan Taylor. Is that right, Roger? And they managed the fair. Now this is a bit of a question I have. When I was reviewing this, it looks like we now actually have a Nevada State Fair website, and it says coming soon. So if you don't mind, I'd like to ask just to understand maybe for next meeting we could add to the agenda, but to see what's different there.
Sure, we will agendize that. It's a separate, unrelated event.
It is.
Yeah, but we will agendize it if the commission would like that.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I'm interested in hearing that next time around. So anyway, 2015 Nevada Fair was a success. Something I think might be important, especially if that's happening. Please check. I think that there's still some links, like some of the web URLs say State Fair. I could be mistaken, because if this is a different thing, that may be different. But if you wouldn't mind, maybe check that if that's going to be a potential point of contention.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So what are you gonna say about the Nevada Fair to the supervisors?
I think what I'm going to say, I'm going to update this, but ultimately, as I was doing this, I wanted this to be a question for this meeting. But for the supervisors, we're just going to say that originally the Nevada Fair was an organization group that was not run. It wasn't put on by Parks and Rec, but for 2015 it was, and that was just a point I was going to make.
Yeah, and I think what you could say is that the 2014 fair, the 2014 fair was put on through the city manager's office by the deputy city manager, and that the decision then by the current manager was to assign that project to the Park and Recreation Department, and we put on the fair in 2015.
Do we have plans to do it in the future?
Well,
or is that...
we're going to be bringing that forward to the Board of Supervisors in February. Well, it is February now, I guess.
It's not on our agenda.
Well, February 18th meeting, I think, is what we're gearing that towards.
Okay.
So then I'm just saying I wouldn't comment then, since we don't have the data.
I'm not going to comment on it.
Yeah, since we don't have the data and we haven't seen the data.
Okay, fair enough. So the Recreation and Parks Society Annual Conference was held in April of 2015, and Commissioner Kiever and Commissioner Curtis attended the event. And there's a few things that they brought from that, but social media and how that can benefit public entities was all these are, I guess, what would you call sessions that you sat through, right?
Sessions, yes.
So, safer aquatic facilities, benefits, and networking with surrounding counties, and programming efforts in order to get the involvement of like the next generation children. And so, so like in general, I think that was a positive, kind of interesting thing about what how the Parks and Recreation can interface with the community. The Ash to Kings Trail has obviously been in process for a while, but we had the completion of that with a ribbon cutting ceremony in August. And there are trailheads on both ends of both the Ash side and the King side with kiosks and maps, which the maps right now are still somewhat basic in the sense that Ash to King is documented, but there's still a lot of connectivity that like I look forward to in the future that can link all that stuff up. So one thing is I think it's a good start for the community, I guess, as a whole, as far as some of the trail systems. It developed some good credibility, not only here, like as the general community, but also with the different agencies that are part of it, which I think includes, we have state parks, Forest Service, BLM, and of course the city and some state as well. So it's nice to see everybody working together, and it seems like there's quite a bit of momentum there. So that's been really, really positive. And I believe, Commissioner Bagwell, I believe all of the supervisors were there, is that correct? I know there's quite a few of you, I'm not sure about all, but. But, and the mayor, so, yeah.
Standing in front of me.
And so, kind of doubling on that is also there is the Eagle Valley Trail Committee approached the commission last spring, and which I happen to be a member, or I guess you can call a member, but kind of sit on that committee as well. And essentially what we're doing is just documenting all existing trails. And for me, one of my main, I guess, chores of that have been riding and biking around. I collect the GPS data, and we ultimately just load it in and get USGS stuff. And we're just tracking and building a database of all the trails in our community. And ultimately, the goal would be to look into what makes sense to bring in some of the existing trails into the system, and like working with the agencies in order to do that, and then also making new trails where necessary. Again, kind of a joint portion of that also is the SNPLMA grant, which is, I believe, due in March. Is that right, Roger?
No, SNPLMA grant will be due this fall.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Better not. We
Yeah.
haven't yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, actually,
So-
there was a proposal by SNPLMA, we just found out about 2 weeks ago, to move it to March, so it's kind of ironic.
Oh, is that, yeah.
Just said that, and they wanted the members of the PTNA, the partner, Parks, Trails, and Nature Area, to comment on that, and pretty much universally, we all said, no, we'd like to have it remain in September.
Okay. So I know a couple of things there is I believe that they liked people working together, and also looking at tying in maybe underserved portions of the community. And so I think our approach is that why doesn't the Parks and Recreation and the open space work together in order to come up with what we believe is the best, rather than each of those guys working independently and then potentially competing for the same grant. So we had a meeting in August, and essentially what came of that is we developed a subcommittee that has 2 members from each commission that met. I believe that we've met one time. Is that right, Donna?
Yeah, we're meeting the 7th of March?
Yeah.
March 7th is
Okay.
when we'll be meeting again.
Okay.
To make decision.
And you're down to, I think we have about three options, or
Right.
three options that we think are viable right now, and we're gonna decide on one of them, and then, work on building that into the SNP map.
Right.
And, disc golf, we're still continuing, we're, working with the advocates of the disc golf community. I think we've now established, the suitable permanent location, and we're working with the BLM in order to finalize that land. Is that correct, Roger?
That's correct.
Okay.
Well, the property already is in the ownership of the city.
It is,
Yeah,
okay.
that was part of the lands bill
Okay.
exchange.
Okay. Is that that's the omnibus one, or is that? Okay. Endow, well, we just talked about this earlier, but of course, the Endow grant for the vault toilet to be installed at the rifle range. And one thing I just had noted, but the group had the shootout in October in order to help for matching funds with that. And then it sounds like some more funds are coming their way as well, so. And then, obviously, it's not last but not least, but we have kind of throughout the year, we've reviewed the final plans for the MAC Center, which included Miles Construction working as a CMR, setting the guaranteed maximum price. We had groundbreaking in February. And in general, the project stayed on track. Sounds like there's still some things being cleaned up, but in general, I think we did pretty good. The fee structure was reviewed and is going to come back for review again. I think one thing that, as a commission, we still feel strongly it would be nice, looking forward, to have a uniform fee structure that could be used at the MAC Center, the pool. You could have a one punch card or whatever that could go anywhere. That's something I still like as somebody from the community, but so we'll probably keep pushing for that, but well, we're not quite there.
Well.
That was good, huh?
Keep it as a goal.
Yeah.
That's all right.
And we talked about, I think I may just leave this off, the Ross Gold Park renovation, but I know it's kind of more moving into 2016. So I think I'm gonna wipe that guy off the list.
Wow.
So
Wipe them off.
wiped it right out. So anyway, that's what I plan on presenting
Wow.
to the Board of Supervisors. I also then kind of put the future, which is, and part of this, I think I probably speak for the commission on this, but some of these are just my thoughts as well. But one of the things, and as we just discussed on the capital improvements list, but we have never been able to keep up with just maintenance alone. And then we talk about new projects, and for me, it's sometimes hard to look at trying to implement a new project when we're struggling to be able to just maintain. So to me, we have these growing list of resources that are in need of repair, and so I recommend to make maintenance and facilities for parks move up on priority lists. And if that means maybe altering, and I'm not sure how much flexibility there is, but the way the Question 18 funding is, it would be nice maybe if we could allocate more of those funds now to maintenance and less for new projects, but that, I'm not sure exactly how that works.
Yeah, the ordinance allows a shift up to 2% of funds either way. So conceivably, you could move 2% from one fund to another.
And then would that be, so Parks and Rec is 40%, open space is 40, and then there's that extra 20. So would that be, we as the commission could recommend to take 38% and to take the other 2 and move it into the added, so you'd have effectively 22% increased maintenance?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
So for me, I think I would be an advocate for that, and this can be done in a later discussion. But so that's, I think, one thing I just wanted to make known to Board of Supervisors is that, and do we agree that as a whole? Does everybody feel comfortable with me presenting that? But ultimately, that more focus be put on facilities and maintenance, so that we have, not only facilities, but we have trails, all that. So I think is easy to get overlooked. And especially you look at a paved trail and the pavement wears away and it's still a trail. So I think it's pretty easy to ignore it. But ultimately, some of the aspects of that, what that trail was intended for, can no longer be used. Somebody can't roller skate, can't skateboard, can't, there's things you can't do on it anymore.
I think everybody agrees with that assessment. I know staff does, and I'm sure most of the, if not all, the commissioners agree that the maintenance of our existing facilities should have a higher priority or over the, the construction or the installation of new facilities. But I would make kind of a general statement to that effect, because you haven't, this commission really hasn't had official action to that effect. And so, I wouldn't mention the possible refiguration of the quality of life funds at this point until until this commission's had an opportunity to take a formal action on that.
Okay.
And if that's something if that's something the commission wants to look at in the coming year or this existing year, then that's an item we should bring forward to you to have a discussion about it.
Okay. I recommend it go on, whether I'm on the board or not. We'll see how that goes. But I'd at least, if we could, and we can do this, I guess the next option here, we'll recommend to maybe put that on the list. So does anybody have any comments, questions?
First,
All right.
I'd like to say that excellent, thank you. And Commissioner Curtis?
I was going to say that too, but it's a lot of work. Thank you. There's a couple items that maybe you might want to consider. One was the update in March on the Pete Livermore Sports Complex entrance sign. Just, another way of saying thanks, Pete. And then in April, we recommended to the Board of Supervisors a new policy allowing free use of the Carson City Aquatics Facility to resident veterans 100% service-connected disabilities. Now, what's interesting about that one is I noticed that we have the same policy for the MAC. So was the policy that was adopted more general, or do you remember in terms of, because
We
this
did it
says
the
the
same.
I remember it came up at the aquatics facility. There was a gentleman that couldn't afford, and he really needed to use the pool.
I thought we had made a blanket recommendation that all Parks and Rec facilities would be open to residents who are 100% served. No?
Well, I think the recommendation was specific to the aquatics facility, but there was a discussion that we should look at extending that to other facilities, and we haven't done that at this point. Yeah, but again, that's another item that should be.
Yeah.
We did the MAC at the board level to say we would also do the 100%, but those are the only two facilities. It's just the MAC and the Aquatic Center.
And I do remember that, because I thought it might be something that might be worth adding for something for the future. But just to review it and make it a blanket, it'd be a nice gesture to people that have served.
Yeah.
Okay, those are good.
That's it. Thank you.
Any other
All right.
questions or comments? Great.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Appreciate all the work
Thank
you
you.
put into it.
Hopefully it didn't take too much of your time. It's gonna take twice Lori's time.
And do we have any public
1, 2,
comments
3
on
times.
Commissioner Long's report? All right. Hearing none, let's move on to item 4, staff updates. Roger, you're up with the multipurpose athletics.
I am up on that one. I'm going to ask Megan Sirocco to come up and join me on this. She just happened to show up at the meeting, so I kind of roped her into this one. So she hasn't had much time to prepare, but, I think now that the MAC has been open for about a month, and it's getting a lot of use. It's very busy in the evening time with all the sports leagues we have going on there, and a surprising amount of drop-in use too, particularly after school into the early evening, wouldn't you say?
That's correct. For the record, Megan Sirocco, Recreation Program Manager. We opened 2 city leagues on Saturday, January 9th. We opened to the Boys and Girls Club for their use of the facility beginning on Monday, January 11th, and opened to the public on Wednesday, January 13th. I pulled a report before I came showing that we have sold since January 13th 71 memberships, but I do not have the count on open gym participants. But we are very busy, beginning at about 2 o'clock up until we close in the evening. We share space for open gym in the evenings with leagues, with the city leagues and open gym. So I thought 71 memberships within just 3 weeks is pretty darn good. Yeah, yeah.
If I could just make one other comment real quick, and I'll turn it over to you. Also want to report that the partnership with the Boys and Girls Club is going along exceedingly well. We've had comments from the public that they are surprised when they use the facility. They kind of expected that that it might be a pretty raucous atmosphere there with the Boys and Girls Club in there, but they've been very complimentary about the behavior of the Boys and Girls Club and the level of supervision that those kids are getting. So it seems to be right now a pretty seamless and very, very well done or very good joint use project we have going on with them.
So I'd like to just consider making a recommendation for the multipurpose center that it's still so new to the community that we consider having maybe 4 or 5 open houses that are free to the public so that they can come in and see the walking track and see everything, because I think maybe some public education would go a long way, that people would understand the costs and why we're charging or not charging, and see if we can drive that membership up some more. But I think we should go ahead and offer some open houses.
I think maybe Megan and I can get together, and that conceivably maybe we could look at an open house, one open house a month for maybe the next 4 or 5 months, and try to pull something like that off. We'll talk though. We'll see what we can work out, the logistics of it.
I think one thing to note when we talk about some programming is it's very exciting. The track is going to be installed starting tomorrow. So that will take approximately 2 weeks, possibly upwards of 3. But we're all very excited about that. Very excited.
Commissioner Casiopo?
Roger, I know I've seen and we've discussed, like Lori just said, letting the public know what's going on, but what forms of marketing have we done to let the public know that the MAC's up and running and what's available? And if we haven't already, have we considered putting it on our electronic board at the community center here?
Really, it should be on the electronic board. You're absolutely correct. We have really done very little marketing in a lot of ways because, quite frankly, we've had excellent media exposure, through but as that dies down, it's not so much in the media's, magnifying glass. We need to look at some type of marketing for that. We have a very austere budget for this project, and so we don't have a whole lot of funds for marketing, but I think we can. I know that Megan has been posting things on the social media and on our Facebook as well. This, it's kind of covered some of the marketing and what is exactly happening, what kind of events are happening at the MAC.
And I'm not promoting spending money on marketing necessarily, but I think that's a great way to do it. And I think using our electronic bulletin board, especially if we're going to hold open houses and whatnot, is, you get a lot of traffic through there. And I think that'd be good information to have, and it wouldn't cost us anything.
I think at one point as well, the Visitors Bureau will be working with us to create some type of marketing for tournaments to bring in as well.
There's a possibility, a good possibility, that there will be a tournament in April, AAU basketball tournament that may bring as many 40 teams to the MAC over a weekend.
Commissioner Curtis?
Yes, a couple of things on the MAC. First of all, thanks for allowing me to lead the first walk. That was a lot of fun, and I'm so happy I made it all the way around. And with Lori at my side, she promised to catch me if I fell. One of the things that Roger and I were talking about, I'd like to have a future discussion on this, is the hours, because it's kind of confusing, I think, probably for people, because it closes down between 9:30 and 11 in the morning, and as I understand that, it's because we can't afford the staff to have people there the full time. And what could we do about that? Are there some other options besides paying staff to be there longer? Are there volunteers we could get from the schools or the community, et cetera, to maybe cover some of those hours? Or maybe have a staff person there and then volunteers. Anyway, I'd like to have a discussion of the options on having it open full-time.
Just so you know, within these first 3 weeks, we have not wanted to turn anybody away. So we haven't. If they come between those timeframes, either Scott Chapman or myself are working the front counter as best as possible. So we have not turned anybody away. We've tried to educate them about the session times and also let them know that when they purchase, they come in and do a drop-in purchase in the morning. They can also come back in the evening, and that's been very popular. So they don't have to pay twice in a day. And so we're trying to make it work right now, see what the public really wants, but not turning anybody away. They're feeling, I think, very privileged and, that we want to accommodate. So we're doing our very best.
Probably one of the most common requests are that the building should be open, longer hours. So. And Megan has actually had a couple volunteers or a couple people approach her about volunteer opportunities at the back, and she is currently putting together sort of a volunteer program.
Commissioner Long, you had a comment?
Oh, yeah, when we were talking about maybe a few open houses, I just had a thought, maybe just long-term, maybe we consider 1 or 2 times a year having an open house, kind of like a communal kind of thing, and then, again, give it exposure. But it kind of made me think like California does free fishing day a couple times a year, and something like that. I don't know. Just, do they? Yeah. The only reason I know California does, I actually stumbled on it once. It's great.
Commissioner, I'm sorry. Commissioner Glenn, I'm sorry.
It's okay. Just want to say I've been there quite a bit for a lot of the evening activities. It seems to be going along really well. And just thank you for all your hard work. Couple thoughts. There's definitely, especially when we do the rec leagues, parking issues. I don't know if there's anything that can be done about it, but a lot of people have commented on that. And then my second question is the gym here open? Since we've opened the MAC, can people use the gym here, or is it generally closed?
So the community center gym has now been, pulled offline essentially for open gym. So we can utilize that for city youth programs, for overflow sports programs, and for potential rentals to increase revenue as well.
So people can't come here and play basketball?
We're trying to move most of the sports and athletic type of activities to the MAC. Again, it's also a function of limited budget for staffing. We don't have staffing at the community center, for drop-in. So we're trying to promote that at the MAC during those drop-in period of times. But as Megan said, we're still utilizing the community center gym for our sports league activities. One of the things that I think we'd like to bring to the Park and Recreation Commission, probably in conjunction with the infrastructure 1/8 of a cent sales tax, is looking at the long-term use of the community center, that if we can move as much of our athletic programs to the MAC, then we can make this facility more available for other non-athletic community events, gun shows, flea markets, whatever, we have. And we have facilities here because, first of all, we don't have a wood floor here. We have a tile floor, so it's more conducive to that type of traffic. We have a good supply of tables and chairs here, which we don't have at the MAC, and we have a commercial kitchen here that can be utilized for those type of purposes. So we're kind of thinking about the idea of repurposing the main priority or the main intent of the use of the community center gym, towards that purpose, and having most of the athletic events and leagues being held at the MAC. Doesn't mean we're going to abandon the community center entirely from those type of activities, because our activities, we believe, are going to grow, and we're seeing growth, because of the MAC's presence. So we may still need to use it for some leagues and some sports events too.
Any other comments or questions?
So I'm just trying to remember. I thought that we already had overflow before we had the MAC, that we didn't have enough programming space for all of the, so I just want to be clear. You're saying the MAC has been able to actually accommodate all that we need?
No, it hasn't been. Because we are trying to accommodate open public gym as well. We are utilizing the MAC, we are utilizing the community center and the middle schools when we're able to get into them. They obviously have their own programs, their budget constraints as well for custodians, and, their professional development days, they utilize the space that we would typically use. So when we're able to get in the school district, we're still in there as well. So we're in multiple facilities.
Our intent was never to abandon the middle schools as well, But there's also an increase in our efficiencies if we can have as many of these programs in one location as possible. And the school district has their own projects, and their own programs, and their own use of their facilities as well, too. Really, what we're seeing is the MAC is going to open up some possibilities for other type of programs that we haven't been able to provide to the public in the past.
You mentioned a basketball tournament coming in April. I'm assuming that's going to be over a weekend. Will the community center gym be open for free play at that point?
That's a possibility, because I think Scott Chapman, who is in charge of our programs, is planning on shifting some of those programs to the community center, isn't he, for that weekend?
So it wouldn't be open to the public because we won't be able to utilize the MAC for our leagues, so our leagues will be shifting to the community center. So at this time, we may not have any open public gym time because of our leagues are being shifted from one facility to the other.
And remember, the gymnasium here is less than half the size of the MAC. So when we have, when we move our programs, for instance, if it's our youth basketball programs or our futsal programs from the MAC down to here, it'll really fill up this gymnasium.
I think the other thing that we haven't considered, but we can, is simply the staffing of bringing somebody here to monitor one door, because as we all know, this facility is not a one entry, we don't have a one entry point as we do the MAC. So I think there's some logistical things that we'd have to overcome, budgetary constraints as well. But, those are always something that we can consider.
Okay. Commissioner.
And again, it kind of goes back to over winter break. I was wanting to go take my kid to play basketball. It was right before the MAC was set to open. It was on a weekend, and it was also winter break. You couldn't go to the middle schools. They weren't open. You couldn't go to high school. It wasn't open. MAC was not open yet, and I went and shook the doors to see if I could get in, and the community center wasn't open either. At the same time, it's winter time, so you can't go outside and play basketball on one of the outdoor courts either, which can also happen in the spring too if it's bad weather. So I guess the question I have, or the concern I have, is if a father wants to take a son to play basketball, either on the weekend of that tournament or when the community center is being closed, or it's on a weekend, and the MAC's being used only for recreational organized activities. Where do you go? What can you do? And can we do something about that if there is nowhere to go?
It's a difficult situation, because I understand exactly what you're saying. It really comes back to a function of available staff and budget. It'd be nice if we could have, during the winter breaks, if we could have all the facilities open. It might be a goal that we shoot for, and when we start talking about budget requests in the near future here for our operation budgets. But right now, it's a matter of adequate staffing and budget to support it. Great idea, though.
Commissioner Bagwell? Commissioner Cassiopo, you had a?
No.
Commissioner Curtis?
By any chance, Megan, have you broken down the various uses in the gym to kind of get an idea of people mainly in there for futsal or volleyball or handball, or Do you have an idea, or will
So
you?
we've got the leagues. We've got our city leagues. Right now, we're in the seasons of youth basketball and futsal. Soon we'll be going into men's basketball, and the newest program we are offering is high school basketball. So we're very excited about that for the high schoolers who want to play recreational league, who may not have gotten onto the team at the high school. So we are offering that. So we're coming into that season. If you're asking about open gym, basketball is probably hands down the most popular. We are 3 weeks in, we're trying to work out to really see what the public wants. We are taking staff time. If people are saying they want to play volleyball, we're trying to set aside a couple days so we're not putting up the volleyball nets. Wear and tear is huge on those for us to put up staff time if two people say, hey, last minute, I want to come play volleyball. So we are trying to set some time aside for that, but primarily it is hands down basketball in the afternoons, evenings, and obviously the walking track as well.
Questions or comments? Any public comments? Roger, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Megan.
All right, we're going on to 7, public comments. Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, future agenda items, I apologize.
Did you get a report from this?
Oh, yeah, we missed.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, we skipped over a lot. Let's go back to number 5, members' announcements and requests for information. Do you have anything to report?
Yeah, I can, I'll keep it short. I know we're getting late here. We've been busy at the school district level, but not so much in terms of how it would impact open space, but just a couple of points I'll make. We've been having a lot of interesting discussion, and we've adopted, the state's recommendation and requirement on the nutrition program, which has an exercise component to it. There's been a lot of talk, and we're still in, discussion at this point years ago, we took away what a lot of people are calling the second recess, so we're talking about bringing it back, which means kids are going to have more time outdoors, which has an impact on our facilities. Not a great impact, but, we're trying to increase that and balance, these requests with the overall amount of time we have for school in general. And other than that, nothing regarding open space, but, we've been busy talking about school improvement plans and renegotiating the contract with the current superintendent and things like that. So it's been busy, but now we're into a new year. We've done our new elections for the school board, not the public elections, but just internally about who's wearing what hat up there. So it's been interesting, and just while I have the mic, I'll just make a plug. This weekend was a big dance competition here at the community center, and and there were probably, I don't remember, 250 groups, everything from solos to duets to group numbers using this facility, and the front lobby was packed, the theater was packed, this room was packed. It was dance pandemonium, if you will. But it was fun to see. I mean, we talk about these facilities getting used. That was a good example of probably 75, 80% of this facility was being used, so it was a pretty busy weekend. Yeah, nobody collapsed through it, so we're okay there. I wasn't going to bring anything up.
We weren't going to say anything.
But anyway, no, so it's been busy at the district level and at the community center level, so that concludes my report.
Let's move on to item 6, future agenda items, discussion only. Commissioner Bagwell.
So I would like to add for a future agenda item, discussions on whether or not restroom facilities should be added at Long Ranch. I've had requests, and I understand you looked at it maybe 8-10 years ago and stuff, but again, I think we should revisit things every so many years to see if it's still the right path. So I did that.
All right.
Got a couple as well.
Okay, Commissioner Long.
And I kind of had mentioned this, but if we could add, I believe that the fair budget review or whatever was going to be on the agenda, but now my question about what the Nevada State Fair and what the direction, everything, if we could add that to the future.
Okay.
Would that be April? I guess it would
April.
be now. And also, and I don't know if it's appropriate or not, but if it would be appropriate to get an update on the Schultz Ranch. I know we had talked about another development today. It made me think, like, where is that? We heard about that roughly a year ago, and
Well, they're working on the project. They're moving dirt. and doing a lot of grading out there. They have not started any landscaping, at this point. So, I mean, there really isn't much of an update. I
Okay,
guess
sure.
for the future, we could probably add that in there.
Yeah, if it's nothing worthy, that's fine.
Yeah.
I just thought I'd ask, so.
Anybody else have any items they'd like to see on future agendas? Commissioner Curtis?
Yeah, just to repeat my request that we have a discussion. I see we have update on MAC, that it would include, the possibilities of having it open for regular hours.
Okay.
And use of volunteers, et cetera. Sounds like Megan's already on that. And for Commissioner Bagwell's information, I don't know if I still have a rather large file regarding the restrooms at Long Ridge. And I hope enough people have either moved on or moved out that were in that neighborhood at the time. And I think it's something that probably be favorable by now.
All right, if there's no additional future agenda items, let's move on and see if we have any public comments. Any of you? Okay. So I'll move to item number 8, possible action on adjournment. I'll entertain a motion for adjournment. Commissioner Curtis?
I just wanted to say thanks to staff for putting an article in the FYIs about my husband's book. I was very surprised to see it there, but it was really nice of you to do that. Yeah.
Very nice. All right.
Thanks for the entire staff being here tonight.
Exactly, thank you so much. We appreciate everything you do. May not seem like it at times, but we do.
For adjournment.
Move for adjournment. Did somebody make a motion? Okay,
Yep,
do we
she
have a
did.
second?
Second.
All right,
Do we have to be in
All right.
favor?
we're adjourned.